What is up, everybody? Good to see you. Thank you very much, as always, for tuning in on the usual Sunday night. Really appreciate you guys. Mr. Redjack, thanks as always. I saw you here quite a lot earlier, so I don't even know if you're here or if you just dropped in super early to do your traditional welcomes. But I appreciate it either way. I hope you are here or will be coming back at some point. Mr. Easy Go Lucky, hello to you, sir. Southern Comic Geek, hello to you. Marcus, as always, thank you so much for your patronage, my friend. Thank you. If anyone, look at this, he says, if anyone can, the Vega man can. Thanks for the support to my wife. Thank you, Vivian. And Hart, Candyman. I don't know I don't know what you're expecting to happen though, Hart. But thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And Jason, sir, as always, thank you very much. I appreciate it. All the way from Lansing, Michigan. And the Rickster, as always, good evening to you, sir. And everybody's saying hello to everybody. Mr. Eagle, thank you so much. Yes, if I'll repeat it as always, if you would please do what Mr. Easy Go Lucky is asking, is to just, you guys don't even know. You guys, and especially those of you watching on Rewind, I don't ask anything of you. I don't ask for money. I think about it, I don't even ask for subscribers anymore unless you plan to watch my content. And if you don't want to really watch the content after this is your first time and you don't plan on being here, I always say, don't even bother clicking subscribe. It's cool. The one thing I would like is if you could just hit the like button, the thumbs up that you see there under the video screen. That'd be great, and I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you, John Brown. I appreciate it. Appreciate seeing you here, sir. And what are you saying here, Hart? I'll just finish my wonton soup, ready to party. Okay, cool. So yeah, guys, I am super excited for tonight's chat because, as some of you already know, I am not all that familiar with some of the books that Mark collects art from. And so, but I know that they are very well respected and have been for decades and won all the awards and all that stuff. So I've been kind of looking at tonight's episode as more of in a sense, a learning opportunity. I just like to get into the heads of the minds of people who do like and are super into the things that I just don't maybe get, and see why, what got them into it, and what it's all about. And so I hope to learn not only from Mark, but from some of you guys who I'm sure are fans of some of the books whose art he collects. So yeah, learning opportunity for me, and I very much look forward to learning both from Mark and from you guys here in the chat. So, sorry, what are you saying? What happened to Tommy? Man, dude, I don't. You know what? I didn't even watch the end. So you feel free to pop the final score if you want. I don't even want to know. I don't even think I want to know the final score. But don't ask me. I don't know. It's not his fault. Whatever. I didn't want to get into that right now. But my Lions, the Detroit Lions, baby, they won, and they're gonna win out the next 4 games, and they're gonna finish 10-7. You mark my words. And Michigan Wolverines gonna win the NCAA national championship this year. So it's gonna be like a Michigan fest for football this year. CJ, good to see you, sir. Good evening to you. And hello. Arwen's busy studying for exams this week. But yes, thank you. I appreciate it. I'll tell you said hello. So nice of you. And David Barr, the Reubenites. David, all the way from Australia, as always. I appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much. Okay, so without further ado, why don't we bring in my new pal, Mark Vega.
Hey,
what's up, Mark?
Hey.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, no, of course. No, it's great. Hi, chat. Hi, Marcus, especially. I think we've almost connected a couple times. I think you've been at, various conventions, I think, or signings that I've been at. So good to see you, as always. And Thanks for all those compliments. Shout out to Rick Welch. I think he just left a comment on my Daniel Warren Johnson commission, so thumbs up for that.
Very, very good. Yeah, yeah. Hold on. Remind me what was the subject matter of the commission?
Mad Max.
Oh, the Mad Max one. Yes, yes. Yeah. No, that was cool. I think I left you a. Did I know I was staring at it for a while. Did I leave you a?
It's never too late.
It's never too late if I didn't. There are times where when I'm staring at it and sort of studying a piece, I stay there so long sometimes that I forget. I end up thinking, oh, I left the comment already, right? And I leave, and I realize only later, like, oh, wait a second, I don't think I ever left the comment, But I'll check later just in case. CJ, the Mind Miner, thank you, sir. Tommy is a Wolverine. You better believe he is. And I hated him when he was one because he wasn't good. Only when he proved me wrong, and he proved the world wrong as he got into the NFL. That's when I said, okay, I'm always the first to admit if I'm wrong, and he proved me wrong, and I've been loving Tommy ever since then. And yes, look at these guys talking football. They know I love it. TB is still leading they're still leading the division with that. Well, that's a crap. That's how shows how crap the division is. I know. So we got a couple of hellos. Mr. Easy Go Lucky says hello. CJ, of course, hello.
Hey, everybody.
Rick, the Rickster is saying my pleasure, of course, and he says that Max rocks. And I've got Reba J.
Well,
hey,
Reba.
Hey, all. Hey, Reba. Good to have you here. And it's always a nice day for a Jeff wedding. Greetings, Cheddars, out driving around. Okay, no worries. Drive safely, by the way. And one last one. What do we got? Mark, what? Looks nothing like a Street Fighter character? What's he talking about?
He wears a mask and he has a ponytail hanging out in the back. Yeah.
Who does?
Vega, the character from Street Fighter.
Oh, the names. I never watched that show, so I don't know the names of the characters. Yeah. Okay, so there's a guy called Vega. I see. Was that the green one?
No, he was the guy. What was he? He had kind of a bullfighter's outfit. He just sort of jumped around. He had claws.
Okay. Oh, Wolverine.
Yeah, a mask, like mouth, just kind of two eye holes. But
okay. Cool. Awesome. Just want to show really. Oh, what's this? Jeff is cruising the strip indeed. Let me see here, just a real quick. Where is it? Yeah. So, you guys. So there is a collector in our hobby, and I didn't have time to check it. I wish I did. So his name is Jason, and I don't know who the character is, but like his on CAF. His avatar is like the background's bright orangish, yellowish, and he's got kind of like this flat-looking black character, almost like what's that character that the little kids, Slim Man or something or whatever? I don't know. It's got some black character on it. Anyway, say again?
Slender Man.
Slender Man, yeah. It's something kind of like that or what? I don't know. It's weird. It's not Slender Man, but it's just that's what it kind of reminds me of. Whatever. Anyways. I just discovered today because he followed me on Instagram, and then I noticed his name he was using, Comic Art Channel, and then I noticed, he's got a YouTube channel. So I went to check his YouTube channel, and it's comedy, obviously Comic Art Channel. It's a Comic Art channel, and it is dedicated to comic art. I only had a few minutes to sort of look through it. It does appear to be sort of a pre-recorded material. I did spend about 15 minutes, though. I had to because his most recent episode, it's about a 15 or 16-minute review of Love and Rockets. It's a collection called The First 50, I believe, and reprinting the first 50 issues in a multi-volume slipcase edition. And so I thought I'd mention it because it's, of course, because of tonight's show, it ties in. And because of the fact that after I watched the video, I scrolled down to the description and noticed that my new pal Mark Vega here left him. He left Jason a comment. So I was like, what a small world, Yeah, so that's it. So for anybody who wants to check it out later on, it's a comic art channel. What's it about? Well, it's comic art. So it's called Comic Art Channel because it's comic art. It's a channel about comic art. So pretty easy to remember. So there you go. Check it out if you can.
Yeah, highly recommended.
Okay.
Jason.
Have you checked out some of his other content?
Yeah, Jason and I know each other. I think we're both in the Bay Area, so it's I'm familiar with that.
Okay.
I think the character in that avatar is from Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is an anime series.
Okay.
But yeah, no, Jason's got a great collection. He's deeply passionate about a comic art, so definitely check it out.
Okay. Great. Excellent. All right.
Let's see if we can get you to order one of those Love and Rockets collections before the end of the show, or sometime right after.
Well, we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna be talking about that. Yes, exactly. Jason K. Exactly. Hey, Mikhail. By the way, good evening, sir, or good afternoon to you. He's here. Look at him. Jason's here. Thanks. Okay, Neon Genesis Evangelion. There you go. Oh my gosh. Okay. No, you're very welcome, sir. I enjoyed that first video. So when I get some time, I will go back and catch some of your other ones. But thank you for tuning in, man. And yeah, hey, it's Slender Man. Exactly. No, apparently it's Neon Genesis Evangelion, and I will never remember that after the next few minutes. So there we go. All right. So let us get to our wonderful guest, Mark. Mark, if you don't mind, most people have not minded. Nobody has refused to tell me so far, but I always like to get, because when we get into the sort of the backstory of collectors, I just find it much more interesting and easy to sort of put a time frame on everything. Do you mind, first of all, mentioning to everyone what age you are?
Yeah, I'm 51.
51. Okay. Hey, we're basically the same age. I'm 52. So, okay, excellent. So we all came in. We both came in certainly at the same time, or we've been around certainly with comics for as long as we as each other. Except what age did you first discover comics and start reading them, and / collecting, if that's what you
did? That's a great question. I'd like to say that I discovered it, but it was mostly my dad, who was a longtime comics reader and science fiction reader. He was responsible for getting me into the habit.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to go to the store. I'm going to see a Treasury edition, and one of the first comics I remember was that Super Friends collection that I think we've all seen in the past, with an Alex Toth cover on it. But that was one of the first things I read. There was a Batman Treasury. I think it's essentially reprinting the Ra's al Ghul storyline, right?
Oh, yeah.
Neil Adams, OMAC 7. That was one of the first comics that I can remember reading by Kirby. So,
wow. But OMAC 7. Oh, but you reading it because you were reading his back issues, I guess.
Well, that was roughly contemporary. So that came out, I think, kind of in the mid. Well, that must have been a back issue because that was a little early. But he was, and I guess he's as much responsible for kind of like pushing this habit on me and kind of, helping me to spend tens of thousands of dollars. But it's like one of those where there was always like, he saw that I responded to these. He fed that habit every week. I'm going to come with a fresh stack of comics from 7-Eleven, right? And there was no distinction between Marvel and DC. So it's just like, I'm going to get you some of this. So like, you're going to get a Marvel team up. You're going to get a Marvel 2-in-1. You're going to get Action Comics. So yeah, it was kind of, and I think at the end that kind of like guided me, and I think kind of helped me to appreciate both of those big two franchises. So big two companies. And so I think that, I'm grateful to him for that. I think kind of like helping me to keep my taste kind of relatively open as a young reader.
Cool. And do you remember if he started exposing you to the comics as early as you can remember, or do you remember what age it was in particular?
Yeah, it was pretty early. So it must have been around like 5, 6.
Wow.
It was some of my earliest memories, just kind of getting into the hobby. Well, it wasn't really even a hobby. It was just things that I read and enjoyed.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, he was, and then I didn't really know that there was such a thing as the direct market until the early 80s, because I had people that I went to school with, and they would have things like, I've never seen that DC book before. Here's an issue of Vigilante. And I think it was issue 7, right? I didn't even know such a thing existed.
Right.
But then, I asked them, right? And that sort of, pushed me towards those direct market, hole in the wall books in Falls Church, Virginia. That was kind of my church at the time, basically, right? I'm going there every single Friday, getting new comics.
How close or far was that from your home?
Yeah, it was about a half an hour drive. So
Wow,
like, you know, it's a
drive.
lot of bugging the parents to get you to go there get them to go there every single week.
But was your first visit to that place? I mean, was it because your dad was aware that there were comic shops, but he just figured they're far away and I'll get them at the newsstand, and that's
No, I think it was mostly me, like, you know,
okay.
hey, you know, we get the comics, right? We get them from 7-Eleven, wherever, but get
Yeah,
them like a month early because, you know, the direct market, you know, you get them a little bit earlier than, you know, your Safeways, your 7-Elevens, whatever. And so,
right.
yeah. And so it was like, you know, and so I think he was game to check that out, right? You know, let's see what this is all about. You know, I might be interested in this too. And I think his comics fandom really kind of, I don't want to say died, but I think it kind of scaled back after a certain point. And he was less interested as he saw me get more interested in reading comics. Um, you know, I think maybe he kind of, I don't know, I want to say he saw me get obsessed with it basically because I was coming back with, you know, 20 comics every time I went to the store. So, yeah,
Okay.
but,
Yeah. And
but
was he more of just simply a reader, or did he bag and board? In other words, collect?
yeah, he was pretty much just a reader.
Just a reader. Okay.
Like I saw him like put the most random assortment of back issues in like one of those old photo binders. So like he had the first issue of ROM, he had like an Alice Cooper issue of Marvel Spotlight. So he was just like, you know, I think this is going to be a collector's item someday. I'll stick him in this thing. You know, probably
Oh,
not, but yeah.
but he was he so even back then, which would have been like in the late 70s, he was still kind of thinking about collector's items, the potential for value in the future, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. But still primarily just in it for the reading kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. And because by the time, you mentioned Vigilante, you're talking 1983, if I'm not mistaken. So at that point, you're 12. Um, is it something where like you end up going to that store when you first went to that store? I guess this is sort of a better way to put it. You end up going to visiting that store, which I'm assuming your dad, you bagged and he took you, right? Right.
Mhm.
And so when you get there, is it that you wanted to focus that day on, what's the kind of stuff that they have that I don't get on the newsstand? Is it that, or was it just, I'll just look at whatever, everything, or
Yeah, no, I mean, I think at first it was probably just like, you know, let's get the books that I normally can't get, right? You know,
interesting.
let's get something like the DC Baxter line when they started kind of publishing those. But then, you know, I mean, I think you can't help but be like, okay, here's this like everything around me, right? I see some graphic novels on this shelf over here. I see some back issues over here. And so it's like hard not to get swept up in that. And this store was incredibly, I guess it was just packed to the gills full of comics, books, etc. So it's hard not to kind of like pick up on what's around you. And I think that helped me do that as much as anything. It was a way of like, you know, there's these other things in addition to the comics that I normally get.
Okay. And hold on, let me pop this up here. Rick reminds us that ROM number one told us that it would be a collector's item. Yeah, and as we all know, if the
If they
publisher,
say it on the cover,
if they
yeah.
tell us on the cover, we're all going to be millionaires one day. Oh, that's funny. So okay, so now here's an interesting thing I'm curious about. On that first trip, given that you had to, your dad had to drive you there for half an hour, how long do you even remember? Was it like, did you stay there because it took so long to get? Did you stay there for like an hour, 2 hours, and just sort of immersing yourself in everything? Or was it kind of still like a quick trip where you picked some things to buy and, all right, let's get out of here, son. We're driving back.
Yeah. Well, you know, as generous as my dad was with his time, you know, he was also like a pretty demanding like Puerto Rican dad. And
Oh,
so
really?
like he's
Okay.
like, 30 minutes tops,
Oh,
before I
really?
got in. So I think that helped to focus me a little bit. And
Okay.
but yeah, no, he was very strict about that. He would come into the store if I went anywhere over that.
Oh, I see. Get ready to get you. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Kavi, what is up, sir? Good to
Hey,
see
Kaveh.
you. And okay, interesting. All right, so now one thing that I found very interesting about you is as I peruse CAF and I read comments. Of course, I don't just like to leave comments. I like to read everybody else's comments on any piece that I'm leaving a comment on myself. So I read all those comments that as well. And I noticed, because of course I know that your art collecting focus is mainly on independent books. Yet, based on what some of the things that you've said to people in your comments, I noticed that you give indication that you have been all throughout your time from childhood, onwards, it seems, into reading mainstream superhero stuff. I just reading a few comments gave me the idea that I was like, I remember thinking, oh, Mark's like, he seems to know, and he's indicating that he seems to have a lot of memories about all this, mainstream superhero stuff, or even going back to all the 80s and 90s and whatever. And which, again, to me, I guess it just seemed a little, surprising. Not super like, wow, it's rare. I've never heard of that before. Given what you collect though in artwork, it did seem kind of surprising. So I guess I'm just curious, did the reading of independence, did that begin like it began for a lot of us who are our age, where it was the mid 80s was the age and era of that whole, especially the black and white boom, as we used to call it, was that where you first got sort of, latched on to the independence? Or did you, were you just doing superheroes into the 90s and then somehow go backwards and, hey, I'm going to try those independents because I want to try something different?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I have as much my brother to blame as anybody else, because he would go with me to the comic shop.
Oh,
And he's a little bit older than I am, so like, he gravitated towards the more adult material. So one visit we went, and he gets American Flag issue 14, and should he have let me read it? Probably not, but he did. And so I think, that was one of the things that really started to push me in the direction of looking towards other kinds of materials. It wasn't that book alone, but it's American Flag one time, it's like something from the Epic line the next. Paul Galassi, Doug Mensch did a Six from Sirius.
Six from Sirius.
Yeah, and so it's like, wow, this is great, right? Still science fiction, but enough of like a bridge towards other kinds of materials and away from superheroes. But I was still reading like Legion of Superheroes at the time, all the kind of great books, New Mutants, X-Men, stuff like that. So it's kind of like split in a couple different directions. But I never completely dropped reading the superhero comics, and even today, I'm still interested in them. I'm no longer, not to the same degree, right? But I feel like it's so much of my DNA that it's kind of hard to, completely not read that stuff and want to be familiar with what's going on at a given moment. And really, I think I think it helps me to appreciate comic art, whether it comes from the kind of material that I collect, or whether it's somebody else adding to their collection, like Ian, for example. Some of the Guardians of the Galaxy pages that he posts, some wonderful cartooning in that, that I think, it's like I'm really drawn to that, right? I can really appreciate that regardless of, that it's coming from a mainstream big two company. So
yeah.
I think kind of like having kind of an equal familiarity with kind of more independent books, but also kind of the mainstream, I think that helps me, at least I see it, to be like a better appreciator of comic art. So yeah, I still read big two books, not much, but like it's hard to kind of completely divorce myself from that.
Right. Do you have any idea, ballpark at least, how many monthly books you read yourself every month?
Yeah, monthly less so, and I've switched to digital more. It's kind of something where it's and I think it's more graphic novels and stuff like that, and collections rather than monthly floppies. But I would say anywhere from like half a dozen to a dozen. I picked up the new Justice Society book that just came out.
Oh,
There's some of the
the new one
Yep,
already came out. Oh,
yeah,
that's the one that's Jeff Johns is doing again, right?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
I
Did
think
you?
his time around with the JSA.
Okay, you read it already?
Yep.
How was it?
It's convoluted. I
Oh,
think you have to really be deep into DC history, especially Golden Age history. It helps.
oh,
I like that stuff. I'm able to like, I can go deep with some of the continuity, but yeah, I think it's not new reader friendly. I just want to say that.
interesting. Okay. Yeah, I only began getting into, well, I guess my first exposure was this JSA what is it, a 64-page book from 1987, I want to say. The Last Days of the Justice Society of America. That was my first exposure
to Valhalla, right? I think at the end of it, they were.
What was that?
They sent them off. They sent them off to Valhalla at the end.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
that's the one.
Yeah. See, that's what I love about you. It's like I keep thinking about you always as this independent guy, but not only have you read all that mainstream stuff going back to the 80s, you remember it even better than like I don't remember it well, but you definitely remember it like pretty well. Like, wow.
Yeah. David
David
Ross and Mike Gustovich on art, Roy Thomas.
Yes.
So that's it's in there. I can't believe I know these things. But
wow, that's funny. I don't remember almost anything about story details going, back to the 80s, 90s, whatever. But I was always an art guy more than the story guy. So I tend to remember the issue by who drew them, who inked it, who wrote it, or whatever. But primarily the art, Yeah. So that's.
Are you still reading? I mean, to turn the question around, are you still reading like monthly?
No, I don't. I find my over the years my attention span for reading just got shorter and shorter and shorter, and so I've been on record as saying, ranting, if you will. I am not a fan, and sorry, because Nick Barucci's here. Hey, Nick, and he's a comic book publisher. But I got to be honest. I am not a fan of the monthly 22 page format, and I've said, I think it's high time. 20 years gone at least since the American industry should have moved their way into OGNs, original graphic novels, an adult format for adults who are reading the books,
Yeah, totally agree.
And so that's it. And so because of that, I first of all, floppy comics. I have no interest in collecting comics anymore. I like to read, but not collect. So therefore, that format lends itself only really to, yes, reading, but collecting, because you can't stick it on your shelf. It just slides off, and it looks crappy on a shelf, right? It's too floppy, and it's not sturdy. And so I don't want to deal with comic plastic bags, boards, all that collectible stuff, long boxes. I'm done with that. So I just want to book, read it, put it on my shelf. That's it. So I do read, but I tend to wait until certain storylines or events that sound interesting have finished, and once they've come to an end, then maybe I decide, do I still feel interested and curious about what that was about to read it, and then if I am, and I'll order the trade paperback, or whenever that comes out. So that's kind of like how I do it, It's been a long time. I haven't actually bought regular floppy comics since '93. Yeah,
that's a good long time, but you're somehow managing to keep up. I think, I mean, what's the like? Do you hear like, there's this great new collection, or there's this great storyline, and do you start to read it, or do you just kind of like making that regular trip, checking stuff out?
I tend to check online, right? I'll try to keep up online and what's happening with this character or these characters or whatever, or these creators, What happens though is if it sounds interesting and it's one of these hyped up events, believe it or not, what happens more than often than not is I will wait. Oftentimes I wait sometimes even like it could be a couple of years before I decide, okay, I'm going to try it now. Because usually when it's a super hyped up event, and I read it when I used to read them quick, right after it was completed and it came out in a collected format. Most of the time, sometimes it's not good, sometimes it's very good. But even what I felt is that even when I read something that I felt was very good, it was still nowhere near as good as all that hype that was being produced for it at the time that it was coming out, you see? And so it makes me feel disappointed. And that's why I feel, you know what, if I just let things go for a few years, whatever, I forget about it. And then I remember eventually, I'm like, am I still curious to read what that was all about? And then I will go back. And then I find I tend to enjoy it more that way when nobody's talking about it anymore. Yeah, I will say though, as an art collector, the big drawback about doing that is coming to this to reading the stuff late is that I tend to be a guy who, like, when I read something new, like even if it's a few years old, to me it's new, right? Because I'm reading it brand new. I just bought the trade, right? So when I tend to read stuff like that and I enjoy it, I like, as I'm reading it, I get hyped up and I'm like, I will put the bookmark into the book. I'll put it down and I'll come to my office, get online, and try to see what kind of art from the series is out there. You know, I want to buy some of this art. Oh my gosh, let's see what's that. And of course, what's going to be out there when it's been a few years already since the series, right? So most of the art's already it's in the wild. So that's
here's a question. This is kind of a segue, right?
Yeah.
Tom Grummett, I know you're a big fan of his.
Yes.
He's doing a Kickstarter book with Carl Kiesel, or Carl Kessel, whatever pronunciation works. Section 0. Is that art that you are interested in or have ever tried to ask about? Because it's spectacular art that he's doing for it. Really, creator-owned book. But I was wondering if that was something that you're interested in, or is it just the, Superman, Superboy, Teen Titans?
I would so I have read the Section 0 stuff. So here's the thing: is that Section 0, for anybody who doesn't know, just a nice little segue, but it does qualify. It's an indie book, I guess, sort of science fiction / superhero ish. The thing about it is, when in 2000, when they first started that, Carl Kiesel writing it and inking it, I believe at the time, with Tom, they only got 3 issues out, and then Gorilla went under, whatever it was that happened, right? And the only way they revived it was through that Kickstarter, I don't know, 5-6 years ago or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
So I did participate in that, and I got that book, and I read it, and I enjoyed it. And then they quickly announced that second Section 0, right? Kind of a prequel or whatever, Section 0, 1959. Did you get in on that by any chance?
Still waiting.
Okay, so I don't have to say, for anybody wondering what we're talking about, we're just simply saying it's one of those projects where, unfortunately, it's already been like 3 years or something, and we're still waiting for it to get completed. It's still getting done, but at a snail's pace. So we're all waiting. But no, I like it. I liked it, but not necessarily enough that I would want to buy art from it. Although, having said that, in that first collection they did, do you remember how in the collection they put some pinups? They got several different artists to do some pinups for it or whatever.
I do.
So Jose Luis Garcia Lopez did a pinup, and it just so happened I was at Terrificon, Connecticut in 2019, right before COVID, and he was there, and I looked through his stuff, and he had that pinup. I was like, oh, that's cool, whatever. Like, okay, So I picked that up because I'm a fan of his, but I don't own any of Tom's, Section 0, So there you go. Is that something that you may have wanted to get?
Yeah, not so much, but like I think I've always liked his work in particular, Carl Kiesel. I think it's one of those things where I think great inker, right? But I think as a writer, I think he did some great Fantastic Four issues. I think he's done kind of solid issues all around. I remember Hawk and Dove back in the day, wrote with his wife. But yeah, no, like I was drawn to that. I'm a fan of Tom Grummett's art, not to the point where I want to compete with the likes of you and everybody else that wants that art.
Thank you. With the likes of you, how disgusting you sound. you sound so disgusted by me, with the likes of you.
Well, I know that I like to, if there's somebody that really loves that and kind of has that kind of deep commitment and passion for that art, it's like and I know there's like hundreds of pages already on CAF. It's like I'm less likely to pursue that. But
Right.
he's like, I think one of the really kind of solid, and not even solid, but spectacular, mainstream artists, I think, of the last 25 years, easily to me. And so to me it was no drop off when he started doing Teen Titans or any of those other books. It was like, yeah, this guy's great, and it's like he's only gotten better, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh yeah, he's better today than he's ever been. I mean, his pencils are just, you look at his pencil work, it's beautiful. The clean lines, the spot on anatomy he's always had, but it's even better today. It's like it's gorgeous. it just what makes me sad is that he doesn't want to do. He long ago already sort of decided I'm tired of the monthly grind. And so, even if you go on Facebook to the Art of Tom Grummett group, there's always going to be fans that are like, like last week or whatever, I posted, one of my X-Men Forever covers, and somebody says, I hope we can see Mr. Grummett do some X-Men comics soon. And I'm thinking, oh, poor you, because, other than the occasional like one-shot special project or whatever, he's never going to do anything again, right? He doesn't want to do monthly comics anymore, and that's sad. But to be deprived, especially now when he's still at the top of his game, better than he's ever been, right? How great would that be to be able to see a monthly a book by him?
And to the point of like people doing the monthly grind, I think that's one of the things that I guess that's maybe one of the. It's not the biggest reason why I like independent work, but it's, these are guys that aren't necessarily tied, guys and women that aren't necessarily tied to that monthly grind. So they're producing work on their own schedule. There's no editorial presence hovering over their head necessarily. So it's really, I think, the purest form of their creative vision to me. And so I think that's something that I think shows in most of the art that I've collected. I can still see it in the superhero art and the big two art, but I think, it's in its kind of most pure form, I think, when I see some of the independent books going from the 80s to today. So I think that's another reason why I think start to gravitate towards this kind of art, even though I'm still reading that big two material and really deeply familiar with history.
Okay. I'm curious. That's a kind of a good segue, a good time for this question. So you mentioned that you could be reading anywhere from 6 to like a half to a dozen books, right? How many of those are currently independent books?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to stretch it a bit to like Image, right? I don't necessarily see them as independent. They're almost,
I know, kind of. Yeah, I'm kind of
2.5.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I think some of them are Image, some of them are Dark Horse, Boom, etc. I think, so it's the big indies as opposed to, kind of the smaller ones, your Fantagraphics, right.
Yeah. Is there even one that you read or have read in recent years that was sort of more, like the kind of thing that most people haven't even probably heard of because it's so a small publisher kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably have to sort of dig through. I have kind of not a long box, but kind of just filled with kind of more random or small press stuff. So I'd probably have to dig in there. I have to say that lately, there's been a lot of collections of material that I read back in the 80s. So like Dan Clow's 8-Ball, a lot of this Fantagraphics material that's being republished in new form. So that has been kind of a lot of my reading, and I haven't really been gravitating towards new stuff. So I'm a little kind of nothing like, comes to mind right away as something that like, here's a small thing that we should all be aware of. I've been reading like Do a Power Bomb by Daniel Warren Johnson, like everybody else or most people. That's one thing, loving that series.
Mikhail's got some nice art from Do a Power Bomb. Yeah. I know that. And by the way, he mentions AWA. What's AWA? Boom, I know.
Yeah, it's another, I want to say Bill Jemis, who used to work with Marvel along with Joe Quesada, is one of the people there. He may have left since then, but I think he was one of the people leading that company. I think, I wouldn't say they're smaller, but like I think it's one of those things, they're kind of like in that mid-tier of independent.
Okay, and I stand corrected, didn't you? Don't have any power. Oh, I'm sorry. I would swear the first Power Bomb. Remind me, just in case, maybe I'm the one who's all screwing it up. But Power Bomb is the one with the Mexican wrestling, or what is it?
Yeah, it's wrestling. I mean, it's I guess cosmic wrestling, I guess, is one way to talk about it. Yeah.
Okay, because I thought, when they have the masks, like it's traditionally because it's Mexico that.
Yeah, the luchador.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like looking at a lot of different. So it's like drawing in a lot of wrestling influences, Japan, Latin America, WWE. So I think it's kind of like, I think he goes deep. I think with a lot of wrestling in all its different forms, like across the world. So yeah, it's a great book.
Okay, good. Yeah. So sorry, what I was saying, Mikhail, is I could swear all this time, the very first page that I left a comment on from the Powerbomb book, I would have sworn, I would have bet money. I'm not even a betting man. I would have bet money it was you. I thought you, or are you just being facetious now? Because it's if you are, it doesn't really translate through the computer. I think you probably got complete issues. That's
maybe he doesn't have any power bomb that he's willing to post to CAF just yet. That might be it. So okay. I don't know.
I think I just think he's just yanking my chain, whatever, being sarcastic or whatever. And so he's saying, to follow that up, it's a Daniel Warren Johnson wrestling ash can, not the piece that I'm talking about. Okay, so you're being serious, and you just had a piece by him, but it wasn't Powerbomb. Okay, sorry, I stand corrected. Thank you. Okay. But I know I've left comments on a few different people who have had. But anyways, okay.
Yeah, there's a ton of wrestling related art, kind of pinups, commissions, etc. You probably, it's out there. I mean, there's probably a ton of stuff. I think the story that ML has might be the Liger story that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
There we go. Comic Art Channel has come in and confirmed. Okay, that hopefully you're not like ruining some surprise or some some kind of thing that Mikhail was trying to keep on the down low. Okay, and what are you saying, Marcus? It was the Ashan comic that he has. Okay, cool. Well, I like I said, I stand corrected. I thank you, and hey, Mike, good to see you, sir. Says La Mano del Destino is a good independent luchador comic. Okay, so that's what I was kind of thinking it was. It's about luchador, whole. Okay, Mano del Destino. But Mano del Destino, so who publishes that? Is that something anybody's heard of other than you, Mike? Because I've never heard of it. And is it a Spanish language comic or just the title Spanish? Let us know, Mike. And okay, Mikhail saying he does WrestleTober too. What's that? WrestleTober? Is that Movember?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things like 30 sketches or 30 pieces for the month of whatever. So.
Oh, okay. And look, David. I see. I love you guys always coming in with the knowledge. I appreciate that, David. Axel Alonso from Marvel is the chief creative officer.
I knew it was somebody from Marvel. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Anybody know what AWA stands for by any chance? Funny how it's a publisher, but there's no C in there for comic or that's interesting. Okay. And Nick, there's a wrestling match happening in the comments. Exactly. Let me know who wins. Okay. So tell me this, Mark. During the 80s, because you mentioned you did start reading the independents during the 80s.
Yeah.
What is the first independent comic that you remember reading?
Yeah, there were a couple. I think it was that issue of American Flag that my brother exposed me to.
Okay, but hold on. Yeah. When you read that, did that make you suddenly, sneak off and start getting the next issue and the next issue of American Flag, or no?
No. I think it was kind of, dependent on what my brother would bring home with him from the comic shop, because he would, have other material. But there was an adaptation of a Elric novel. That was one of the first things I got. So not independent, but I think it was Pacific Comics, First Comics, whatever. Roy Thomas, P. Craig Russell, Michael Gilbert. I want to say it was Elric and on the Sailor on the Seas of Fate. I think that was the one.
When it was being published by First, was that the stuff?
Yeah, so it must have been First. It must have been when they moved over to First. But that was one of those things where it's like, okay, this isn't Marvel or DC. I had read one of the Elric novels previously. I was kind of a precocious reader when I was young.
Okay.
And so I was familiar with that. That got me into it. And then I think it was just kind of incrementally, right? I'll move over to some of like the First comics. Like I'll read Nexus. Issue 12 was the first issue of Nexus that I had read.
Oh, cool.
There was, Badger, Whisper, like all of that, John Sable, all of that First comic stable that I think, was really interesting to me at the time.
Yeah, me too.
People that I was familiar with, Grell was doing it. Steve Rude, like instantly became one of my favorite artists. Badger was the Badger,
Yeah.
Mike Baron, kind of crazy superhero.
Crazy superhero. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
fun. That was
yeah,
really
yeah.
fun.
And so it's like that kind of material where there's like enough of a connection to stuff that I had read, right? It's like science fiction, action, fantasy, whatever, but like just not of the big two. And I think that was the things. Yeah, and so that was kind of like my first exposure. It was like a bridge towards reading other kinds of material. And I think, and then starting to read Amazing Heroes, Comics Journal, and you get
Oh,
a sense of like there's like kind of this entire world of comics that you're not really familiar with, right? There's Love and Rockets, there's these newspaper reprints that they're doing, like of old strips. So this wealth of material that helps you to become like a really to see that there's like stuff beyond the big two. And so I
yeah.
think that was kind of like what helped to spark my interest in reading a lot of different kinds of material. And to be honest, like once you've read like crossover after crossover, and two heroes fighting, and then the status quo is restored at the end, you kind of start to kind of a little bit of interest. I can't completely stop reading that material, but I think
Right.
my interest started to wane just a little bit. And you're getting older, right? You don't want to be reading the same kinds of material that you read when you were 7. So
Right. Well, you probably just pissed off a bunch of people in the chat.
sorry, Kat. I'm not trying to hate on it. Yeah.
A lot of us are, our age and older, and I guarantee you, they're reading primarily the stuff we read when we were 7. So
Yeah, well, I think it's mostly like, you want to, it's like yes and, right? Yes, I read the big two, but and I also all this other stuff. So
like Mikhail says, big two, I don't know how to quit you.
so they get you. That's the habit.
Hey West, what's up, dude? Good to see you, man. He's still 7. There you go. That's it. There you go. But yeah, it's not to disparage anybody, but I get what you're saying. I understand. Listen, me too, right? That was kind of the thing where in the mid 80s, I'm 14, 15. And I only started when I was 12. So I'm only like at that point, a few years into it. And I'm like, oh, I'm seeing all this stuff from like First, like you said, right? And I see like some of my favorite creators are there, So it's like, oh, Mike Grell's there. Oh, wow, what's this John Sable stuff? Looks great. I love the John Sable. I was just like you said, even though I was only 14, 15, 16, I remember thinking like, yeah, I love my superheroes, but I kind of still want to read something more adult if I can, something, what I mean? Something that wasn't sort of introduced originally as an entertainment thing for children, right? Which superheroes were. And so that was the thing. I saw all that John Sable stuff and then American Flag. I will say I didn't read a lot of American Flag back then because what I read, I didn't start from the beginning. Maybe that had something to do with it, but I felt confused. I remember the few issues that I tried. Some of it was really interesting, and some of it was like I was confused. So, and I couldn't tell. Is it because I didn't start from the beginning, or is it just because it's a little bit over my head because it's meant for older audiences?
Yeah, I think kind of just looking at the art and especially the lettering in that book and the sound effects, like which is kind of art in itself. It's one of those things that I think is kind of deliberately confusing, right? It's like he's playing with a lot of different effects, both Chaykin and Ken Bruzenak, the letterer. I think it's you just wanted to feel more adult. Yeah, no, of course. I think that's it's natural at that age, right? You don't want to be like 12 to 14 forever.
I mean, I don't know that I wanted to feel adult. But I did, and maybe so. Maybe that is a truthful, accurate content. I just don't know. I can't answer that. The way I describe it always is yeah, I don't know, something. Yeah, maybe something that just felt like I would see the guy who managed my local comic shop. Right, he was already in his 20s when I started going there as a 12-year-old. So when you're 12, guys in their 20s are adults. Ooh, they're old and they're adults. And he would I would hear him talk to these older customers that would come in about certain independent books or whatever, and the way they would talk about it, it's like they revered it. And I just kept thinking to myself, I'm like 13, 14, 15. I'm like, man, it sounds so interesting. Like you know, why, you know, what is it? Why I'm only interested in these superheroes, but the kind of stuff they're talking about, it's not even superhero related, but it sounds really interesting. Like, I don't know. I want to find out what it is that they love so much about those books they're talking about, you know? It was that curiosity, I guess, you know? Yeah.
Well, I
And
know you know, I think you've had a show where you talked about, you know, paperback cover art, right? You know, and
yeah.
I think, you know,
Did you
and
watch
so when
that
you,
one too? Did you
I
watch that?
did, I did. So, you know,
Oh, thank you.
yeah,
Thank you so much, Mark. I really do appreciate
yeah,
I'm
no,
being
it's
honest. I really appreciate it.
yeah, of course. But like, I mean, were you reading like lots of different kinds of material at the time? Like, were you interested as much in the art of those or, as well as the story? Like, is that
No,
something that you were carrying? Okay. So it was
no.
just the art on those.
It's all
Yeah.
about the art, and in particular, because I'm more than anything, I'm into hard-boiled crime as a genre for that type of art. But I can say that came from me. That came because I was a fan of that genre in old Hollywood. So the films of that genre from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, the noir stuff, right? Film noir. I started getting into that. I mean, this wasn't, by the way, this was not that long ago. This was, I don't know, mid 2000s,
Mm.
because I spent my life like a lot of kids when I was young. Oh, anything on TV? Oh, just a black and white movie. I'm not watching that shit. You know what I mean, right?
I did.
And then of course I would read things about those classic movies of the era, and see on Entertainment Tonight Leonard Maltin or whoever, whatever, you know, people, older people than I, talking about that kind of stuff, the noir from those days. And I always intended, okay, I should check it out and give it a fair shot, you know, and don't just dismiss it, because I always dismiss it out of hand as a child because, well, it's in black and white. I didn't care for it at the time, you know.
Right.
And then in the either early or mid 2000s, I finally said, okay, it's time. I'm gonna start looking at these movies. I'm gonna start hunting them down and watching them. And I did, and I fell in love with that whole genre, you know. And then I said, wow, when I discovered the paperback novels, I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna get the yeah, Rick, exactly. I'm gonna try to hunt down like cool scenes that are, it looks like they were scenes from those types of movies. Of
Yeah.
course, the paintings are in color, not black and white, obviously, right? But those types of scenes, and I got really interested in the idea of the femme fatale.
Yeah.
I love the femme fatale, like a strong, powerful woman who doesn't take shit and she's not afraid to give as good as she gets. That kind of thing that really appealed to me, you know. So yeah, so that's it, and that's kind of what got me into that type of art, you know.
Yeah, I
Um,
just saw this is not, you know, of that era, 50s and 60s, but have you seen the Last Seduction? It's kind of a modern
oh, of
noir,
course,
one of my favorite movies like
of course.
of that
I,
genre. Yeah.
I again, just like comics, I couldn't tell you a single thing that happened in it because I only watched it when it came out and never watched it again, even though I intended to, you know.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking, oh, this is great. It
Yeah.
was wonderful, wonderful.
Femme fatale, double crosses, you
Yeah,
know,
it
yeah,
had everything. Yeah, exactly.
everything.
You know, yeah. So that's fantastic. But thanks for reminding me, because I do need to rewatch that. You know, remind me, what was her name? Because I think that was the first time I was introduced to that actress.
Linda Fiorentino.
Fiorentino. I don't remember the Italian name, but I just couldn't get it. That's it. Wow. Oh yeah. Excellent stuff. I'm gonna have to go back and see it. Hello, Comic Guard Boston. By the way, thank you for coming in and out. And Vivian Arwin, Comic Guard Boston is saying hello to you.
Yes.
I said Comic Guard Boston is saying hello in the chat. I'm on live right now. She's waving hello to you, Comic Guard Boston. Thank you. Appreciate it. That's more trucker women. Yeah, I'm definitely not into trucker women. Except I do love that movie. God, the
Big Bad
serial
Mama.
Eileen Wuornos. Sorry,
Oh, sure. Monster. Well, there's a couple of like badass female trucker movies. I think Big Bad Mama is one. I think, you know, and Big Bad
Okay.
Mama 2.
Okay.
Angie Dickinson. Check it out.
Oh no,
Um,
yeah, that would have been more 70s, right?
70s, early 80s.
Oh,
Like I
yeah,
think the
okay.
sequel was early 80s. I want to say, but
Okay. Yeah, no, I've with that kind of stuff, I've tended to stick to 30s to 60s, but primarily 50s and 60s.
The good stuff.
Yeah, so there you go. And Comic Boston, what are you saying? Apologies if this has already been covered, but why would Mark not also venture into collecting mainstream artwork as well? I was going to get to that myself. We're getting there. We're slow. It's a slow burn, Comic Boston. My own collection is one that looks to variety, right? So yeah, go. Oh, although then he says, although it's more expensive as a result. Yeah, so why don't you go in and take? I'll put it up there, and we'll leave it there and take that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a legit question, right? It's like if you're
Yeah,
going
for
to
sure.
read like lots of different kinds of material, why wouldn't you also want to like bring that same diversity to your art collecting, right? In some ways, like to focus on something seems incomplete, right? You're not like open to the full variety. But, I think the kinds of material that I like to collect, I think it, Jaime Mendez, I think he's no slouch when it comes to like, being kind of one of the great artists and illustrators of the last, 30 or 40 years. And so
Sorry, who are you talking about?
Jaime Hernandez,
Oh,
like,
Jaime, yeah, Jaime.
so you see,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so like, he had ample opportunity, like, he was offered books at DC and Marvel. So there's really that, and so like somebody who could have gone down that road. But I think it's just one of those things where it's like, I guess a lot of like the art that I see, um, I have a fondness for having read that, like, as a young person, but like the stuff that I continue to read, stuff that I continue to read and have read for like 20 to 30 years. And so that to me is like more interest. I'm more interested in collecting that type of art as opposed to like, here's like, a cover with like, Iron Man, posing, fighting somebody else.
Right.
Um, there are great examples of that, and most of them already exist in people's collections. It's part of like I got into the hobby a little bit later. It's
Yeah.
like a lot of that really great stuff has already been, is already on CAF. You can already see it. There's
Yeah.
great examples of it. And it's like, do I go down that road where it's like, I get one great piece for like, however much it takes? Or do I like try to kind of like, stick with what I'm really interested in reading currently? So yeah, I think it's one of the things where part of it is economic, part of it is taste, and I think it's just like, okay, I want to continue collecting in the future and not to like buy like one or two great pieces and say, hey, I have this great example by Neil Adams or Gene Colan, somebody like that. Um, so a long convoluted answer, but yeah, I mean, I think
Okay.
part of it is economic, wanting to kind of like start relatively slowly. I don't think I started, very slowly. Part of me like wants to keep doing this for a while and not kind of like, and to do that, I think I need to kind of stick with the kind of material that I'm currently reading and interested in, like some of the vibrant artists that you see in non-big two books. So I think that's kind of something that I've thought about, right? I think
Yeah.
I think I bought a Michael Cho Batman piece. That was one of the first pieces I bought.
Wow.
And one of the pieces I think we're going to see is like this cover from Neil Hansen's Whisper issue 18. Not
Oh,
a big two book, but like a relatively mainstream book. But I have a deep fondness for that cover, but I don't think I have a lot of nostalgia for like the art of that period. Great art, but I just don't have a lot of nostalgia during collecting that sort of material.
I understand. I understand. Are you seeing this? What I'm seeing? Am I sharing properly?
Yeah, there we go.
There you go. So
No,
this
this
is
is funny. Even before I started as a collector, I kind of always wanted this piece of art, and I kind of detail it at length in the description there, so there's no need to go down there. But like, it's
yeah.
one of those pieces. My family and I were in Japan for 3 years in the mid '80s, and
Oh,
my dad was stationed over there. Wasn't with the military, but was working with them. And so it's like
okay.
when I came back, one of the first things I bought was one of those Amazing Heroes preview specials. And it's like, here's
Yeah.
all the comics
Love
that will be
those.
published over the next 6 months. And this cover in particular stood out to me, right? I had read Whisper before I left. And so when I came back, it's like, oh, maybe I'll start reading that again, right? Female ninja, that sounds interesting.
Sure.
But this cover, for some reason, was like incredibly, emo, dramatic. Um, had a lot of energy. Like I liked kind of the texture of the hair of the rain, just kind of a ridiculous and overwrought cover, but like I loved it at the time, and like this really stuck in my mind for the longest time. So when I started getting into collecting, I found a way to reach out to the artist Neil Hansen. He has long since left comics, but this is one of the pieces that he still had, was willing to let it go. And like from that, I ended up selling a few pieces of art for him on behalf of him to CAF members as well. But yeah,
right.
this is like the first thing that stood on my mind. I wonder if that exists. I wonder if anybody has it. I wonder if it's available. Can I get it? And so, yeah, no, I was happy to pick up at the beginning of the year. So after I had started collecting, but this is the first piece that I really had in mind. Is like, I wonder if that exists, if I could still get that, and kind of make that happen.
Cool. It's beautiful. I love all the rain effects, the whole lion, I suppose. It's not I mean, do you call them gargoyles even when they're shaped like, I don't know, different animals?
Like
yeah. I don't know, but whatever, the stone
thanks, Wes.
facade of the building,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it.
I don't know if West has been accelerating his collecting, or maybe he's just had stuff and has been posting it, but he's been on fire lately, and I've noticed this where he's just like posting Marvel Silver Age cover after Silver Age cover, like over and over again. So, goes to you. I think you've been on a real run lately. It's been fun to watch, I think, as a spectator of that. So
Yeah.
I think that's one of the joys that I get from CAF, right? It's like, even if you're collecting a certain kind of material, you can get excited about the kinds of stuff that others are collecting. And so that's one of the things I like about it. Even if I, I may not want to get a Marvel Silver Age cover at any point, but I'm glad that there's someone really picking up these incredibly formative covers from that period, and spectacular. So like that's awesome, West.
And just to go back, because you gave your response to the Comic Art Boston, and he says he understands and totally agrees, but the greats like Kirby and Ditko also deserve our attention. Had independent comics existed then, they would have been like the Hernandez brothers as well.
I wish I could show you my shelf off to the side, full of omnibuses. Like I have the Kirby Fourth World omnibus right here. I've got a Ditko Doctor Strange. So it's like I'm still reading that stuff, right? Still, I go back to that. I think I reread the Fourth World stuff. I want to say every year, like I try to, because it's one of those things where it just kind of like endlessly rewarding to me. But no, I've got collections of that stuff, so I'm still able to read it in that way.
Well, he does want to let you know that
appreciate it.
He likes your gallery, all the art in it, certainly. And CJ says that he sees much of your CAF gallery displays great tonal contrast. Is that a conscious thing? Do you like heavily blacked art that provides a lot of that contrast?
I think like all of us, I like to see ink on the page and like a lot of it. And so the more the better, preferably not faded. I think that's like, I like that interplay of black and white. And I think kind of like thanks, Jason. It takes one to know one. I think his collection is spectacular. But yeah, no, I'm definitely drawn to that, kind of that contrast, or pieces with that. And I think Jaime Hernandez is one of those artists who, in particular, you see that in his work. He's always drawn for black and white because it's always been published in black and white. So yeah, I definitely gravitate towards that.
Right. And so Comic Art Boston also said that modern mainstream artwork can be quite affordable. That's very true, and that's the thing. Sure, a lot of people, believe me, I don't think any of us have to say it. A lot of us know. A lot of us would collect Silver Age art as well as whatever else we collect. It's just gotten so way out of most people's affordability.
Yeah, and I definitely think some of the guests that Ruben has had on, I think of Ian, for example. I see these Groot pages. I don't read that, so like I'm not like I have to have that piece of art. But like the cartooning and some of those things that he's posted recently is just outstanding to me. And so like I can value it that way. Like if I was going to collect it, I would definitely like look to things like that are more on the cartoony side. But yeah, no, there's definitely spectacular mainstream artwork, and you may see a piece or two, before the year is out.
Yeah, and I did want to add just to the point you said earlier about complimenting West's the run he's been on with the Silver Age. What I have always really enjoyed about West and him as a collector specifically is that here's a guy who, if anybody who's seen the gallery, right, you know, he will have, sure, he has these, higher end, what we call higher end, this beautiful Ditko Spider-Man art and bronze and now Silver Age cover art and what have you. But if you follow his gallery like I do, I mean, on any given day or week or what have you, he may have a, very tough to afford for most people type piece today. And then the next time he posts something, it could be something from like that came out this year and it's $150 or $200 piece kind of thing. So he's really, you don't see too many guys. And by the way, I just want to, shout out to Comic Art Boston too, because he also started out primarily as a Silver Age guy, but this goes, over 2 decades back now, right? And over time, he sort of broadened his, horizons as well, expanded his horizons, and he collects art. Like he was saying earlier, he gets things from independent books, mainstream books. He will get stuff from Silver, Bronze Age, 80s. Like he's all over the place, So I like that. I like it when you see, because that's how you know somebody is truly appreciative of the art, of whatever nostalgia they may have for the piece. I love that. I love that far more than, and no offense to those people who collect only from one era. You know what I mean? But like typically a Silver Age collector, you don't really see them buying modern contemporary art from this year or last year or whatever it is, And so that's what I've always kind of enjoyed about the both those guys, Comic Art Boston.
I mean, and I'm open to that, right? Let's say I get all the kinds of pages that I would want from like some of the artists that I really, your Jaime's, your Peter Baggs, your et cetera. Like I'm open. I would love to get a great Kirby page. I think, I'm definitely open to that. But I think kind of like, to me, like I'm sort of going with what brought me originally as a collector. It's like,
Right.
this is material that I'm really drawn to. The art's available, and it's not, I wouldn't say it's cheap. I think it could definitely, I think that it's undervalued to some extent. But yeah, no, it's like, I'm pacing myself. I guess that's one way to say it, right? I'm trying not to kind of like, spend, oh, yeah, I'm not surprised, Wes. Yeah, no, I'm trying not to kind of like, go nuts and then having to sell a bunch of stuff, right? I get stuff to keep it and not to necessarily trade it or flip it for other stuff.
Right. Which is, again, and there's no right or wrong way to do things, I mean, people who buy stuff to maybe flip, they it's oftentimes it's to help them afford more stuff kind of thing, right? And so
Sure.
it's yeah. So I hold nothing against anybody who does anything like that. I did want to put the Comic Art Boston's, let me see, where was it? Here it is. So it said, Mark, following up on CJ's comment about tonal contrast, would you like to collect Wallywood artwork? Some of it is affordable. That's the key. Some of it is affordable.
Yeah.
Comic Art Boston, let us know, because of course everybody has a different way that they define certain words in the hobby, as such as affordable, expensive, whatever. Let us know what type of Wallywood art you find still affordable. To me, I for a few years, for many years, I found his strip, Canon, the Canon strip. I found that very affordable. I can't, but even that's lately been going up quite a bit. I can't say I find that I know any of his work that I would consider affordable. Although there is some stuff maybe you could make the argument. However, I also feel it's really not strong stuff. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know, but let us know, Comic Art Boston. And
to answer the question, yeah, no, definitely, I would love to get something wood. I'm not as drawn to those Canon strips. I mean, I like them. It's decent woodwork, but yeah, no, I would love to get something from Mad, incredibly expensive as it would be. but yeah, no, I think he's definitely somebody that I look to as, I do have a checklist, right? And I have things that, like, in a perfect world, I would want to get these pieces in this order. Um, I try to be relatively orderly and strategic about what I'm getting. Not always easy, especially in this hobby, but yeah, a wood piece would definitely kind of like, would definitely be a feather in my cap.
Yeah, and so he follows up. Commodore Boston follows up with saying that some of Kirby Fourth World artwork is available, and while not inexpensive, still somewhat affordable. And I guess it's still in that. I guess it depends on your budget, right? It depends on whoever you're speaking to. Everybody's got their own sort of level that they can't go beyond or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do follow what he's saying.
I pay attention to heritage and places like that. So I see what they're starting to go for, and I look at the history just to kind of see, are they going to go this much more, say 2 years from now? So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm paying attention. I may have to kind of like get something before they become completely unaffordable. But yeah, not currently on my radar, but like definitely something that I want.
Okay, cool. Why don't we go ahead and why don't I show since and I want you to talk to me about your love for Love and Rockets, and perhaps specifically, if you could, I would love if you could tell everybody what is it about Jaime Hernandez which I'm assuming he's your favorite of the brothers. And if that's correct, what is it about his work in particular that that speaks to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like both of their stories equally, but I like Jaime's art better. I
The
think
art,
that is
I see.
it's one of the things that I've always responded to, is figure drawing, the movement from panel to panel, the way he plays with time and space. Less so, like, I think in his early work, and I think more as he became more sophisticated as a storyteller. Those first 20 issues of Love and Rockets, they're good, but they're not great, because I think they were bringing in a lot of those influences from your Archies, your superhero comics. So
Oh,
it's
really?
like,
Oh,
your science fiction, and so they're like trying to,
oh,
like, throw a lot against the wall and seeing what sticks. So you see too much
oh,
monsters, you see robots, you see
yes.
rockets, you see all the science fiction tropes. But it's
Yes.
when it's but
All
it's
you're
when
mentioning all the things that would piss me off, that kept pissing me
Yeah,
off when I was
right.
reading
And
the
so
first
it's like,
issue.
it's chaotic, it's like, what do I hook onto, right? If we're moving from science fiction to like these slice of life stories, it's jarring to have that transition. But it's this kind of material when he started to move, roughly in kind of the middle of that first run towards stuff that was more character based. Let's just follow Maggie as she, takes a walk on the street, and let's see who she encounters within a neighborhood. So it's like pieces like this. This is, by the way, is the first of Love and Rockets art that I bought from Albert Moy. He had it for what seemed at the time a very cheap price, so it's like, I'm going to snap that up.
And this
But
is are you saying this is the first piece you ever bought from that series?
it is,
Oh, wow, excellent.
yeah.
Okay.
This is kind of like a prime issue for me, so I'm always trying to track down pages that come from this issue. I know
Okay, but
Jason
I
has
thought
one.
but
Yeah,
this is from issue 20. I thought you said it was
it
around
is.
those first 20 that were kind of, eh.
Yeah, I mean, it's like right around like 16, issue 16, where they started to strip away all of that science fiction stuff and really
Oh, I
started to focus on characters. So by issue 20, it's really starting to, have that focus less on kind of, let's follow a science fiction plot, and more like, let's just follow Maggie, her life, kind of, her love life, her job, just kind of these slice of life kind of things. And I liked that at the time. It was different than, like, I think that's part of it, right? It was different from a lot of the material that I was reading. And so it's
right.
like, if you're reading the Comics Journal, Amazing Heroes, they're pointing you into all these other directions. So it's like, yeah, sure, I'll take a chance on this. But it's like, here's a, Latino neighborhood, Latino characters. I had that background for both my mother and father. So it's like,
Can
this
I
interests me at the time.
so I believe you mentioned your dad was Puerto Rican,
Yeah.
and what about your
Yeah.
mom?
Mexican.
Mexican. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So no, I can certainly understand that. Now, I am neither of those. I don't come from that background. My parents were
Yeah.
from Spain.
Yeah.
And I gotta say though, throughout my life, Admittedly, primarily through uh, television series, film. Yeah, primarily that. I've always been fascinated by both, and I know these two things are distinct, but both by the Mexican culture as well as the Chicano culture.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I've always found it very, very, very fascinating for many reasons. Well, I'm not going to get into, but I gotta say, this ties into why, which, you and everybody here probably, they remember me explaining already that my one my one experience with Love and Rockets was I don't know, it was either 2000 or 2001. I finally decided to give it a try, and I had tried the black and white issue #1. Figured I'd start at the beginning. Yeah, and it to this day, I still say it's the worst single issue of any comic book I've read in my life. The worst comic I've ever read. Like, what a disaster that was. So the thing for me was, of course, at that point, I was 30 or 31 when I read it, already being well aware for 15 years at least about how well regarded of a series it has been, and I guess what really sort of was so, what's the word, disappointing, I guess is the best word, about reading that issue and hating it, just absolutely despising it. The worst thing was that I'm thinking, okay, here's these three Mexican American brothers, or was it four at first?
Three.
It was three, always three. Okay, so here's these three guys, and I guess I because I would see when I would read articles or see articles online and what have you, or in pre-internet, when I would see them in the CBG, let's say, or any of those prozines like Amazing Heroes or what have you, right? And any article obviously was always illustrated with some pages from the artwork, and I would see the better stuff. I would see the better stuff, not the stuff from issue 1, and the most of the stuff that I saw, the imagery I saw, appeared to me to be, it gave me the idea that Love and Rockets is a comic about probably the Chicano experience, Mexican Americans more than anything. And I thought, I love that stuff. I love to watch television. I don't know if you remember the program, the one produced by Edward James Olmos. God, it's been over 20 whatever years. Mi Familia, my family,
Yeah.
right? Oh God, I love that stuff. And so I thought, okay, that's what this thing is going to be about. And I was like, I'm all in on that. I would love to buy the whole series in full if somebody tells me that's exactly what that series is about, I'm buying it. But I got to tell you, Mark, even like in recent years, when I see pages here and there, I don't know. I'm not really paying attention to what issues they're from, so maybe that's why. But it just still seems like it's not really about that. I don't know what.
Yeah, I think,
tell me more, like what it. Yeah, what it.
Less so. I think especially over time, right? I think as Jaime has started to produce work, I think it's one of the things where the focus is on Maggie as the central character, right? But she's not. It's not like we're going to explore the Chicano experience anymore. Maybe it did at one point, but it's kind of gravitated away from that and more towards like, I'm just going to focus on my character, the people around her, what happens to her. And so it's like, it's not heavy-handed, right? It's just like, we may touch on that kind of material,
Right.
but I think it's like, I think, Gilbert might be the artist that you're, might be interested in. It's more Central American characters. So there's some of that, but I think it's that, I think, was the hook. A lot of people got into it that way, but yeah, I mean, to your point, like if I had gotten in at issue 1, I never would have continued reading the series because I think it's one of the weakest issues of the series.
Okay,
I got in with issue 31, which I think is
okay.
like when a lot of the things that really started to make it great were starting to really kind of flower, I think, and get really interesting for me. And so from there, I kind of read backwards, right? I read everything that came up to that point, but if I had jumped in with issue 1, like I would have been like, what the hell is this, right? This is kind of like this is chaos. I don't know what's going on. This is confusing. The art is weird. but I think it's one of those things where, over 40 years, these are two artists who have really kind of pursued their own agenda creatively. They're not like saying, you have to do this or you have to kind of like do this storyline. So yeah, no, I think it's one of those things where it's like, watching their work unfold over the last 30 years, and some of it's not great. I don't like Gilbert's recent work. It's not something that really
Oh, really?
appeals to me. Yeah,
Okay.
Jaime is like, I'll always love that stuff. I think he's doing some of his best work now. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, no, it's one of those things where like if you're interested in kind of like seeing, you know, somebody pay close attention to a single character over the course of their entire life, I think that's something that appeals to me as a reader. So that's one of the reasons I think I really enjoy this series. It's like I'm going to follow the adventures of this one character as she ages and gets older, and really, yeah. And this is like from one of those early issues. Probably you probably wouldn't like this issue. I got to be honest, Ruben.
I'll take your word for it for sure.
Because there's some rocket ships there. There's some
Yeah.
like political intrigue and kind of a fictitious country. So you
Right.
probably wouldn't like this issue there, but it's an early issue.
Yeah.
One of those things where it's like I picked this up
There's
earlier this year.
yeah, you know what? Given that it's early though, there's still lots to like about some of the things in the art though. I will say that. I still enjoy looking at it. So, but yeah, no, when I look at the imagery itself, I'm like, the content, I'm like, no, I'm not going to read. There's no way I'm reading this. This reminds me of issue 1,
Yeah, no, it's like I can promise you there's definitely less text as it gets on, so as it moves on.
Okay. See, that's
Yeah,
I'm happy you said that because that was one of the things that I was actually going to ask you. And I was going to mention that not only was it a question of, it was like all these different genres in that one issue. It's all over the map. But one other thing I've noticed is that, and again, since I don't pay attention to issue numbers when I'm looking at the art online, I don't know how long it lasted or if it went all the way until like the end. But I was just like, oh my God, I was like, I can't take it. They do the hand lettering so small because they want to jam in so much writing into each word balloon and each caption. I'm just like, I can't. I'm already bored out of my mind, because of I can't make heads or tails of what it's about. So on top of it, I got to read that much. Oh man, it was a slog to try to get through that. So
well, a lot of those early issues, it's kind of like a letter being written from one character to the other, and so a lot of it is like super text heavy, and so yeah, there's going to be kind of like long passages of text, yeah. But I think if you're kind of used to comics as a visual medium, it's distracting, right? I'm going to see a big block of text on the screen. Why do I want to read that? I just want to look at the pictures or read a story that moves from one page to the other really quickly. But yeah, no, I didn't appreciate it like the first time I read it, but I think it's one of those things where yeah, it's part of like how they evolved as storytellers from that first point where it's like I'm going to get everything on the page to like now, which I think they're a little more streamlined, a little more simplified.
yeah.
You're
You
getting
see,
thoughts in the chat here. I see that. Yeah.
I was, but again,
we really are going to shame you into like buying that $400 collection that came out.
I don't know about that. I will. I promise one thing. I can't believe I never thought of it until now, given how much I've been doing it lately. I will check once we're done later tonight. I will check my local library online portal, and I'll see what they have in terms of Love and Rockets and whatever. I've always been willing to maybe give it a second try again. But those memories are so horrific to me that I'm just like I never have. I'm always like, oh, Love and Rockets. Oh God, no, I can't. So. But I'll see what they have, and yeah, if you say everything from
to be honest, I wish more readers were like you, right? Like if fewer people liked it and didn't appreciate Jaime's art, it'd be more for me, right? But I actually want people to read this series. I think it's worth spending time with. It's frustrating, right? I think there's thousands of pages of material, but I think the best place is really just to kind of start at the beginning, even though it may not be the best place. Start with issue 1 or start with those early stories just to see how it kind of evolves over time. But yeah, I'm interested to know what you think, and maybe we can do a follow-up chat where it's it's like you've read it, now what?
Yeah, but here's the thing, Jason. It's not about sticking with it because, like I said, it's not like I read, quite a few and then gave up. It was, I read one, like I said earlier, was the worst comic I ever read in my life, and said, there's no way in hell. At that time, I said, there's no way in hell I'm ever trying this crap again. There's no way. There's no way you're going to
You
get me to
must have
read that.
really hated it for it
What's
to be
that?
the worst. You must have really hated it for it
Oh
to be
my
the
God.
worst.
Oh, it was like pulling teeth just to get from one page to the next, even sometimes one panel to the next, having to force myself to read all these giant, like, all the text. It was just, yeah, no, it was, like I said, it was the worst comic I've ever read, So
Like, as you've been saying that, I've been trying to think, what's the worst comic that I've ever read? It's a good thought experiment for anybody who wants to
it's
think
kind of
about
fun,
that.
right? To really
Yeah,
think about it. If you do have one, it is kind of fun. I should do like an episode
I want to
one day
say,
where that's the theme,
there you
right? But
go. Yeah,
of course, people in the chat would have to really step up and give their answers, and we
yeah, it's
talk
a good
about them,
question.
because
Team America 10, I think that might be one.
what's so bad about that one as opposed to 1 to 9 and 11 and 12?
Well, it was Vinnie Coletta on full art. I think that was the thing
Well,
that, which is, you
okay.
think, no, actually, no, correction. It was Darlin and Vinnie Coletta on art. Not the best combination. Not a fan of either one of them. But yeah, that was just a mess. Stuck with me. I think you can tell that it stuck with me after all these
I
years.
obviously
Yeah.
you remember that specific Team America issue, So absolutely. I just want to say, Nick, you viewers are all I've said it a million times. I'm nothing if not honest. I ain't gonna bullshit nobody just to pump them up. So Nick, the boys, I have tried the boys. In fact, I was buying the trades as they were coming out. I believe I got the first 3, and then I stopped. So I just want to say, since you mentioned it, Nick, so my thoughts on the boys was simply that I did enjoy it. So I didn't stop buying the trades because I disliked it. I did enjoy it. I thought it was fun. I will say though, I'm one of those who I just don't like that way over the top violence for the sake of the showing how violent you can get. At first it's cool, and then it just kind of, like, I get tired of it. I'm just like, nah, I don't, it kind of turns me off to what's going on in the story. It's too distracting for me. It distracts from the story for me. That's what I felt. Although I will say that's another series, especially after your television series came out, Nick. It's another one that I thought, oh, maybe I should go back and continue from there. So it's on the docket as a maybe that I would try to continue that. So there you go. Comic Art Boston, the answer is yes, and I really enjoyed it. And in fact, I read it like literally the week following the episode where we talked about it, and I asked you about it, and you mentioned to read it or whatever, that it was good. Yeah, I read it that week, and I forgot to mention it again. But I read it and enjoyed it. Yeah, brief for what is it, 4 issues or something. But it was fun. So yeah, so that was good. So why don't we? Sorry. Before we take another look at art, let me just quickly hold on. Suddenly the comments are sliding up. So CJ says, Mark, the cover to the complete Love and Rockets is fantastic. There you go.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah,
I just picked that up pretty recently. I think a couple weeks ago at the SF Comic. What was it? Fan Expo, whatever the name was.
Fan Expo, yeah.
Show that. Yeah, that was not good. But I got to meet Albert. Albert had that cover, and I think it was one of those things where it's like, you got to be opportunistic. It was one of those things that was on my checklist of Love and Rockets pieces that I wanted. So it's like,
cool.
you got to snap it up.
It's fun when those things come together for you.
Yeah, got to talk to Albert, great guy. Yeah, and it was one of those things where it's like there's certain pieces that stick in your mind, and it's like, kind of like that Whisper cover that I showed you earlier. It's like, that's a piece that I would want as a collector. Yeah. And so that was right in my wheelhouse. I think it expressed a lot of what was in that story that it's the cover for. So Yeah, no, I was really happy to pick that up recently, and
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, that's very nice. Just wanted to hit up Carl. Aloha, Carl. Says that he's asking, am I the only person who likes Vinnie Coletta's work? I love his romance, love genre work, Thor too. Well, that's the thing, Carl, is that for those people who don't dismiss Vinnie out of hand completely, I think you will find us, me included, I say us because I'm included in there, that what you're saying right there is absolutely it. It's that generally, no, we didn't like across the board, we didn't like his work. But yes, even I will say that he did lovely romance work. And even people who hate his stuff will tell you, a lot of them will tell you they loved it on Thor. And it's just something that match on Thor with Kirby. I think it's just the subject matter. It just somehow looks appropriate for the subject matter, and it just works.
Yeah,
It works
even
really
those
well.
even those early New Gods issues that he inked, I mean, I prefer Royer as an inker, but like he was, Coletta was solid on those early New Gods issues, and so I didn't, he definitely like didn't take some of the shortcuts that he took, with some of the other work. I'm just thinking of like the worst examples of Vinnie Coletta's work that I can think of, right? So Team America, some of his other books that he was doing in the 70s and 80s. But yeah, no, when he brought it, he really brought it. So like, that kind of work I definitely respond to.
Excellent. Let me just take a moment, everybody, if you don't mind. Since the lovely Nick Barucci is still with us, I can't believe you're hanging out quite long. It's been a while since you've done that, Nick. Everybody, please, if you haven't done so already, check out Nick's channel, the Original Art Experience. Well, the channel is the EXP, but he puts on a show. He's the host of a show called the Original Art Experience on Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific. Let me actually just show you so it's easier to remember when it's visual. Here we go. There you go. There's that handsome devil. So yes, every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific, and it is an art show, an art sales show, I guess you could call it, where we, and by we I mean me and a lot of people that are here today, we hang out in the chat, and Nick sells art. And yeah, we just goof off and have some fun, joke around in the chat. And it's, sort of similar to what I do, except I'm not selling art. But in terms of, the live chat is very live and everybody is very friendly, and it just makes the show a lot more fun. And it's very relaxing, nice way for people to sort of end
I do
work.
check out Nick's show as I'm kind of closing out my work week. I have it on in the background, so I'm not always able to chat. But I appreciate the way that he's kind of like trying to get people into the hobby with affordable pieces. So
yes, that's typically what I mentioned, and I haven't mentioned yet, that typically, for those of you who are not aware, the art sales are typically affordable art. So especially if you're somebody who has been looking at original art and not yet dipped your toe in, that show is a good place to potentially start, because he offers up a lot of great affordable art for people who want to dip their toes. So check it out. And I thank you all for, of course, as usual, giving me that moment to pump up my pal Nick. I appreciate it. And let me just jump out of here for a moment. Sorry. And let me go back into the chat, because I know a bunch of comments are flying up and I'm going to miss them. And here we go. So Comarco Boston says, yeah, Nick's show is fantastic, and he's a lot of fantastic artwork for sale at very reasonable prices. That's very, very true. That's exactly what I said. Yep. And he does. Yes, that's what you have to watch for. Nick does occasionally threaten to go shirtless. And as you've seen the picture, some people say, it's not something you'd want to see him shirtless. I think he's a very handsome devil. So it depends what, it depends what's up your alley. I don't know, but it's a fun show. That's the bottom line, and that's what matters. And I'm going for a month. No, hell no. That's never going to happen. That's another bad site. CJ, so I think Mark just summed it up on, I'm going back to Vinny. So he was hired to meet deadlines. Very true. That is an absolute fact. And he was a speed demon. And that's why a lot of his work, most of his work, suffered as it did, because he was a speed demon. And it you know, in those days when they were catering more to younger kids rather than adults and teenagers, that's all that mattered, is getting the work out and on time. That's all they cared about. They figured, you know, the little kids they can't tell the difference if it's good or bad art anyway, so whatever. And Vinny could probably ink six books a month, you know, so he was really, really fast. So yep. And CJ also, let's go back to Nick. Nick's show is fantastic. Yes, it is. Carl's been there too, all the way from Hawaii, so he knows. We all know, everybody here tonight. So yes, very much. And Karma Boston, Karma Boston says, Ruben was surprisingly cordial to you on your surprisingly cordial. What the hell are you talking about? What are you trying to say? What what are you saying? I'm leaving the. You think I'm leaving the door open to going full Monty? What are you, nuts? Oh my gosh!
After dark.
Yeah, exactly. When I do this, I look. That's good. Okay. All right. All right. So let me. We got some more art to show, and let's head away a little bit from the Hernandez brothers and Love and Rockets. Why don't we show? Here, hold on a second. Let me show one piece from a series that we actually talked about earlier, and that is the man known as DWJ, because his name is so long. And let's get this up on screen. Here we go. Do a power bomb from issue 215. Cobra Sun versus Kaneda the Destroyer.
Yeah, no, I was super happy to pick this up recently, and I think, you know, a lot of the issues have sold complete on this, but, you know, this is kind of, I think we've touched on wrestling a bit, but like, I don't actively watch wrestling, but I like stories about wrestlers because I think they're interesting. There was that Mickey Rourke movie from a few years back, and, you know, and I find the whole, you know, drama of wrestling and kayfabe really interesting. But yeah, no, this series has been, you know, has lived up to expectations, and I think it's one of the things where DWJ is like one of those artists, you know, he's not like Jaime, but he's one of those artists who is getting better with every series that he does. And like, he's becoming more sophisticated as a storyteller. You know, his art is getting a lot better. And so it's like, you know, I needed to pick this up. And, you know, I wish I could get more art from it. You know, I'll probably, you know, if somebody ever posts something on CAF Live, I'll probably pick up another page or two from this series. But yeah, he really hit it out of the park with this one.
Yeah, it's
I just you know, love the, you know, the sound effects, you know, the amount of ink on the page here, you know, the impact that you can feel from it. You know, the character work with each of the wrestlers in this series, you know, they're all kind of different from each other. Yeah, just spectacular series.
Excellent. So even the story is spectacular.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's different from a lot of other material that I read, but it has lived up to expectations, you know, in terms of like, you know, what did I want to read about wrestlers? You know, I didn't really want to read another wrestling story, but like, he adds another dimension to it that I think is really interesting. And I think one of the like things that I like about his work is that there's a character focus to it. Like, it's not just kind of action and people hitting people. You know, the impact of like, you know, violence really has consequences. And so
Right.
I think that really shows in his work. And, you know, I'm really sort of eager to see what he does after this.
Cool. Hey, Ian has come into the chat. How you doing,
Hey,
bud?
Ian.
And he loves it. Okay. Well, it's a nice one for sure. Yeah. And what I had the same idea when I picked it up. Picked what up?
I think he has some Powerbomb pages too.
He does?
If I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Shit. Man, if he does, I would have already left a comment on him. Why am I not remembering? Okay, good. Well, he's doing good. Just got home from the day out. Excellent. As always, a wonderful family man that you are. But no, that's absolutely a nice page. I just wanted to throw in, because it segues, it kind of ties into it. And you mentioned about, you know, you not really being some kind of big wrestling fan. So I know for a fact, I wanted to bring this up just because I know that in the audience, certainly more than these guys, possibly, I assume, but in particular, Marcus and Nick. I know that they are wrestling fans, and I just wanted to mention to you guys and anybody else here watching that. So my own connection to wrestling was I guess you could call it a fan when I was really young. So when I was too young to realize that it's scripted, what I thought early on was I thought that I thought that it was real, but that the referees were all getting paid off. Right, because they do the thing where they're about to pin the guy for three, the 3-second count, and then the ref would suddenly find something to get distracted with and
turned. Yeah, no,
So so as a kid, I thought it was real, but like all those rip-off artists, he's getting paid off or whatever. I didn't realize it was all this whole scripted thing. But I did want to mention for you wrestling fans, if you're out there, because I don't know, I don't know if this is it feels like it's a Canadian production. I'm not sure, so you may or may not have seen this. But yes, I've been watching over the last, I want to say, couple of weeks, a documentary series that's 3 seasons long, and it's called Dark Side of the Ring, and it's all documentaries, 44-minute documentary episodes about the wrestling world. So most of the episodes feature some wrestler or another, or some famous thing that happened that was a big deal at the time in the wrestling world. And it's fantastic. I love documentaries. So I can watch documentaries even on subjects that I typically don't really care for, So yeah, just wanted to put that out there, guys. If you're not aware of it, I believe it came out. It's from 2000, either 17 or 18. And like I said, called Dark Side of the Ring. So if you're a fan of wrestling, try to find it. Okay. So Marcus says, you can find it on YouTube. Okay, excellent. Good stuff. And Marvel, #1 Marvel fan, good evening to you, sir. Watch those as well and learned a lot. Exactly. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I think they're fantastic. Very, very, very well done. Rubén, the toque wearing wrestler. Nice one, man. Nice one. All right, let us go now to, let me see, what should we tackle? Why don't we hit the John McNaught piece? And you can tell us a little bit about that. Here we go. Let me scroll this one here. I love the look of it. Graphic.
Yeah, no, I think this is, I was reading a little bit on the artist website how he did this, and I think there's like drafting film that he uses. So he's painting directly on 2 pieces of film.
Okay.
That, I think each of them has a little bit of the graphic elements on here. So yeah, I think one of the reasons why I was drawn to this artist is that he got I guess one of those, like a blurb on the back of one of his books from the artist Seth, who's a Canadian comic artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I thought, okay, sure, I'll check it out. It was actually, it was really good. I kind of enjoyed the small slice of life aspect of it.
Yeah.
And again, like you, I was kind of drawn to the look of it. But this was, I think, published in, I want to say, McSweeney's magazine, kind of like a literary satirical magazine here in the States. Yeah, but I really kind of like the, single issue story, all in one page. Yeah, there we go. Black ink on 2 layers of polydraw drafting film.
Okay. Yeah, it just looks great. I just love that style. It's very geometric. It's all about shapes, really. It's like different sort of listen, when you learn to draw the human figure, you learn to draw with it's human figure. You learn that it's made up of basic geometric shapes, circles, rectangles, squares, and then you flesh it all out. And this is the more simplified. It's deceptively simple, right? It looks like it's something simple, but this is not a simple style to master, is what I'm, I guess, trying to say.
Yeah, I think a lot of the artists that I like are sort of, they emphasize clarity over kind of adding a lot of detail to it. And I think this is one of the reasons why I appreciate artists like this. Seth, again, that Canadian artist who has done a lot. But yeah, no, and I think kind of overall, like this kind of, I have a preference these days, especially for kind of stories that are not genre based. So I think, this is kind of one of those examples of that. And so, it was the look of the thing, it was the story itself, and that was one of the reasons why. And again, surprisingly affordable. So it was one of those things where I felt like, okay, I'll pick up an example of that.
Yeah. Is it too personal to, and it's cool if it is, to ask at least a range of what you consider affordable for that?
Yeah, it varies. Like, some of the Hernandez pages I'm willing to kind of like go five figures for. I have a
Okay.
complete story, that I paid in that range. It's not high five figures, but it's like,
Yeah.
okay, it's not like for the average collector, it may not be affordable for it. But like I think if you look at these high-end collectors, it's like, that's like a drop in the bucket. But
Yeah, sure.
I'm willing to pay for pages that I really like. And so I think that's, whether it's $200, $300, or,
Sure. But
upwards
but
of that.
in the case of this one by McNaught, can you give a range as to what they
Like,
go
I think
for?
it was like 300. Yeah.
Oh, that's very
Yeah.
affordable.
And he does a lot of work, I think, especially illustration work, like London Review of Books, kind of those types of publications. So
Yeah.
most of his work is not comics, but it's in commercial illustration. So yeah, I liked it. I like the look of it. I'd be open to collecting more stuff from him, but I don't think
Okay.
he actually makes that many pages available.
Oh, interesting. And is there a secret to how you got this one then?
His website.
Oh, I see. Okay, so he does
I mean,
put them out there.
like 3 pages, like maybe every couple of years.
Oh, interesting. Or how do you know though? How do you know? Do you check it so often that you know that that's the case? I guess I'm wondering, how would you know that maybe when you're
I
not
do.
looking, he's not putting them out there and selling them, you know?
Yeah, if he has a website, he usually has an email you can subscribe to for updates. So that's usually kind of
Okay.
the way. Follow on social media, etc. So I try, if there's an artist that I really like, I tend to follow them on social media. So I've plugged in a little bit. Are they dropping this work, that work? Can I leap onto that as soon as I can? Like if it's something that I really like.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. And because you mentioned it, what a perfect segue. Let us show everyone this piece by the Canadian artist Seth.
Yeah, this is a piece he did for the New York Times. It's a story that was serialized there in one of the magazines. It's kind of an Arctic adventurer who was kind of an asshole. So most of the series is just like people reminiscing about him and kind of like,
And he's a cartoonist, obviously.
uh,
No?
no, this is like one of the characters who's talking trash about him, basically,
Oh,
who worked with him. Yeah, but no, I like this piece. It's actually pretty big. It's 19 by 19, so
oh,
it looks
nice.
like, a big, gigantic Sunday newspaper strip. But I've been a
Yeah.
fan of Seth for, I guess, maybe over 30 years now. Some of the people that are probably in the chat have read stories by him, but just love his style, love his cartooning,
Yeah.
and love kind of his stories overall, right? They're usually stories about like the decline of some character. And so for some reason, I'm drawn to those stories. I don't know why, but yeah, this is a great story that I think was later turned into a musical, I want to say. But yeah, no, I love this page. Happy to pick it up recently, and just kind of one of
Cool.
those things where it's like I love those old Sunday newspaper strips. I wanted something that kind of reflected that as well.
Cool. Yeah, it's just got a nice style about it, you know? And again, looks deceptively simple, but it's not. Um yeah, it
Yeah, I think, I guess that's kind of a question to ask you. I know you're like this is something that you've talked about recently. I think it's like, you've gravitated from like, you collect art and then it starts to get too expensive. So you kind of start to like look to different kinds of art and artists. I'm kind of wondering like, and so one of the things that I like is like pieces that may not be the most expensive piece, but kind of remind me of or reflect kind of like a style that I really like. And I think those old big Sunday newspaper strips, I really love those. Like I'm wondering if like, that's something that, has kind of informed your collecting, that's something that, you know, do you just kind of, does Grummett remind you of another artist, or you just like Tom Grummett, or do you,
well,
Mike Perkins, for example, is that something where it's like, I know
yeah,
you rep
yeah.
him, but
Yeah, I mean I've mentioned this before. I mean with Tom, he came in at a time where he was taking over for George Perez, and I just saw his style at the time. Um, I was like, wow, this is kind of like a sort of the in between John Byrne and George Perez. That's how I saw it, you know. Um, even now, as he's gotten better over the years, especially again with the anatomy, the musculature, how he does his musculature. Yeah, oftentimes I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh wow, like I see a little bit of the Burn, sort of the way Burn did biceps, right? And then how the bicep muscle connected to the forearm, and I'd be like,
Sure.
oh wow, that reminds me of that. And so that's kind of what it was. He was like that in-betweener guy from those two guys who, to me at the time, were kind of like two of my absolute favorites, and that's how I kind of, I was like, yeah, instant fan, and I followed him ever since. With Mike Perkins, it was simply a question of, so ever since childhood, when I think I've told this story too, when my dad used to take me to the barber shop, when I was like, whatever, 7, 8 years old or whatever, and I'd have to wait around. And I don't know if anybody has the same experience as me, but like certainly in those days, you'd go to a barber shop or a dentist's office. And this for me was, I'm talking like the 1970s. And you'd go there, and the magazines they'd have for you to, read while you wait for your turn, they were already like 15, 20 years old, right? It's the same old magazines they had bought, for when they opened the shop, and then
when I used to go to the barber shop, that's long past. But
yeah.
I remember seeing like 15-year-old issues of Charlton comics. I think that was a big thing, and somehow they always wound up in barber shops. I distinctly remember that. A lot of those Ditko Charlton horror books, but
right.
Yeah.
So that's it, So for me at the barbershop, I have a distinct memory of it being sort of magazines of the time, a lot of, if you, a lot of them like women's magazines for whatever reason, Good Housekeeping, maybe the wives gave it to the barber, I don't know, a Red Book, but all the slick magazines of the sort of 50s and 60s is kind of what was there. Even some like Marcus says, some Reader's Digest. There was some of that, but mostly it was the slicks, the larger slicks. And I would look through them, and while I'm waiting, and these types of magazines would have like stories, right? It would have fictional stories, and the stories were illustrated. They'd have spot illustrations or paintings, and that stuff grabbed me right away. And oftentimes it was just a pen and ink illustration to illustrate the story. And so even as a 7-year-old, 8-year-old, I noticed I was attracted by artwork immediately, and so ultimately, when I first got into comics, the first guy whose work I fell in love with was Neil Adams. And it makes sense because when I saw his work, I was like, oh my God, it's like those magazines I used to read. It's similar to those spot black and white illustrations I used to, it looked more like that stuff. I'm like, wow, here's a guy who looks like he's bringing, magazine and advertising type illustration into comic books. And it's a melding of the two kind of thing, And so that's kind of how that's why I got attracted to ultimately guys with more realistic styles.
Yeah.
So shadow
I think I left this comment on like one of the Swamp Thing pages that somebody posted recently for Perkins, that I think is like the best work of his career. And, I'm familiar with his work, but like, is there other work that you would point to as like, that's the best of Mike Perkins? Because to me, like I see that work and it's pretty spectacular on Swamp Thing, but like, is there anything else you would point to? I love that Lois Lane book he did.
That was good. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Good read too, not just the artwork, but I thought it was a good read, really enjoyable. It's funny because before he did Swamp Thing, he and I were we were in agreement that basically we were calling like, what do you think is your magnum opus, if you even have one? And we were both in agreement that unfortunately most people haven't bothered with it because it's not superheroes, but both of us were in agreement that it has to be The Stand, Stephen King's The Stand. A lot of it, because up until that time, I felt, because he keeps getting better, I think, with every project. And up until that time, we were like, oh, wow, like, this is your best stuff so far, again. But when you add to the fact that it was a self-contained story, an adaptation of a novel, where a comic book adaptation, and where the comic book adaptation itself is something in the neighborhood of I want to say 680 pages.
Yeah, they did what? Like, I want to say somewhere between 25 and 30 issues,
It's
right?
like a 31, yeah, 31
Yeah.
issue. You know, and so to have it all compiled in one, the connection to the fact that it's a Stephen King project, yeah, to me, we still, we kind of, for years, even after, up until Swamp Thing, I kept saying, yeah, I would have to say the magnum opus would be his stand work. Like I said, even though, I could easily go with the popular thing. Oh, I don't know, maybe what he did on Captain America or whatever. But that's only because, yeah, it was good, it was fun, and it was nice and everything. But I don't want to say that just because, that was the popular thing. That's what a
Yeah.
lot
Well,
of people remember his work
it's
for.
funny that you mentioned that because, like until we just talked about it, I'd forgotten that he drew that series. But his art was the thing that made me want to continue reading that series. I love that book, but that was definitely one of the reasons why I wanted to stick with the adaptation, even though I'm familiar with the story already.
Right.
Just great stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. I mean, so that's it, but I would say so I was sticking with that. And I think he still sees it as his magnum opus for the reasons, the various reasons that I mentioned. Though I would say that I do think, in terms of simply not what your magnum opus is, but what your best work so far is. I now believe and feel it's the Swamp Thing stuff.
Coming back to this whole idea, right? This whole independent mainstream. Does he have any interest in maybe like writing a book that's sort of tailored to what he wants to draw? Or is it like, oh, I'm going to work where the money is, where most of the money is? Or does he like have a project that he really wants to do? Like
No,
both writing and drawing.
no, he enjoys. He's like most of us who are like mainstream superhero guys.
Yeah.
So he's into that, and now that he's 4 years. I can't believe it's already been over 4 years now at DC. He spent 14 at Marvel, and always on exclusive contracts, and now he's exclusive at DC in 4 or 5 years. He's happy because it's a whole new universe of characters that he can now work with. So he's happy to do that. Having said that, he did do a creator-owned project, I want to say, either sometime between 2014, 2016, I think it was. Around, I want to say 2016. But it was only 4 issues. It was a self-contained story written by Mike Carey. And it was about a girl in England, girl in United States, and they're gonna swap houses so that they each can stay, a couple of weeks at each other's homes, that kind of thing, whatever. And the story focuses primarily on the American girl who goes to England. And there's, in case I won't say anything, just in case anybody wants to check it out, whatever. But yeah, there's things going on in that home or whatever, that kind of thing. But what the truth is he has had ideas for independent type stuff. The thing is that he can't, like, when he did those 4 issues, because he's always on exclusive contract. He had to get permission, right? And he got the permission. But they said, of course, as long as you can continue to meet your deadlines with our stuff, your job, sure, go ahead and work on it. No problem. So he was pulling like 18-hour days, killing himself just for 4 months just to get this thing done, right? He can't do that anymore. Like, that's insane. He literally he had physical issues while doing that because of all the stress and all the hours that he was staying up just to do that, So I can't see him really, doing that again anytime soon or whatever. He'd like to, the idea appeals to him to do more his own thing, kind of thing. But, with a family, he always says the same thing. It just, bottom line, it comes down to, I got to kind of feed the family. And it's just nice to know that when you're exclusive, you have steady work all the time. That's part of the contract, is you get a page a day, no matter what. They have to give you something to do. And that's it. And you can't, for him anyways, he can't put a price on that, just having that security.
For sure.
Yeah.
And to Comic Art Boston's question from earlier about mainstream artwork and why don't you want to, I did. I really thought about some of the pages that he did with the fourth world characters that you talked about recently, that I think were recently on your show. So I was almost there with wanting to buy one of those pages. I couldn't quite bring myself to do
Oh,
it. They were very affordable, right? It's not like they would have broken the bank or anything. But yeah, it's I'm jealous of the people that posted them afterwards on CAF because they look spectacular.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, look, I always say we can't have it all though either, right? As much as we'd want to, So, yeah, let's take a look at another of your pieces. There's still a handful of pieces we can show here, and then probably wrap it up after that.
Cool.
Let us share here. So we're going to see another. We're going to go back to Jaime Hernandez and take a look at a page or a piece from Penny. A piece from Penny Century. Let me here. Okay. Yes. So do you see it?
Yeah, I do.
Are we looking at it? Okay, good. So here we go. There we go. Perfect size. The whole thing fits.
I know, it's perfect. This is a piece that I think exists in multiple forms. It's been published, I think, as a calendar illustration, for postcards, I think in a variety of different forms. But I think the story here is kind of interesting. This was not available on Albert's website. It's one of the pieces that, again, stuck out for me is like, I had this calendar, I love this piece from back in the day. I didn't know whether it existed or not. But Lance Suarez had like some old pictures of Albert's booth setups from the past.
Yeah.
And like one of the things that stood out from 2012 was this illustration. So just, randomly, I reached out to Albert. He had this piece. It was kind of an instant purchase for me. I agreed to it on the spot, and I couldn't be happier. This is one of those pieces where, yeah, I can't imagine ever selling this. There have been a couple collectors that have reached out, and it's just like, it'd be hard for me to consider letting go of this.
I'm sure.
Good to see you, Boston.
Yeah.
Appreciate the questions.
Thank you so much as always, sir. I appreciate it. Have a good day, rest of the day, or night.
Yeah, I just I love the inks on this, kind of, how Penny Century is just kind of like right in the foreground and her husband is there in the back. That's a whole story, Ruben. This might be one of the things that turns you off, right? Here's this kind of
really?
Billionaire with devil horns, so, but, stick with it. I think to Jason's point earlier, I think if you stick with it, it does kind of reward your attention. It's kind of whimsical. You like Archie stuff, right? I think you do.
I like Archie, sure, yeah.
Yeah, no,
I like whimsical. So
yeah, so I think it brings that to it. So I think, again, stick with it. Give it a chance. I think you might like it.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Well, you'll when we talk privately, you'll have to sort of tell me if you had to, if I'm willing to give it that second try, give it the old college try again, knowing how much I hated the first attempt, right? You're gonna have to be careful with what you recommend, and then you'll tell me, and if I can track it down, I'll definitely try it for sure. Okay, so excellent, beautiful piece. The next one is actually going to be it is going to be another Jaime piece. So let me share that screen again. Oh, look at CJ. You're such a cad. Horny devil making babies. Nice. Let me see. Share a screen. Here we go. And yeah, so this will be Love and Rockets, page 10 from number 44. Let's check this out.
Yeah, no, this is actually right behind me on the wall, right over here. So this is one of my most memorable pages when I think of Love and Rockets from the later issues. This was issue 44, so like close to the end of that first run. But this is one of the stories where it follows Maggie to this small town. Along with her comes Penny Century, and I think what you find out later is that Penny actually grew up in this nearby town, and so here she's visiting her mother, kind of for the first time in a number of years. There's also a fight going on in the background. One of the other characters. There's just a lot going on, but I think one of the things I like is how Jaime is really tracking all these different threads at the same time. the fight, some of the other characters who are reacting to it, Penny walking back to her birthplace, and then kind of this final really sentimental embrace at the end with her mother.
Yeah, I like that. That's why I'm focusing on that right now. It's I like the whole coming home to mama and having a warm motherly embrace.
But tonal contrast again, so something I really respond to, and I just love this page.
Yeah, beautiful. All right. Now we'll move away again from Jaime, though we will be back after a couple of pieces. But let us first check out one that I recently talked about and became a fan of, Peter Bagg.
Yeah.
And did my wife say good night? Good night, everyone. Good night, honey. See you later. Thank you for all the support as always. Good to have a wife that supports you in whatever you want to do. Okay, so let me share this one, and that is the Peter Bagg, Buddy Bradley. Love this. Let's check this out. Hey, I love that. First of all, I love it when the title is hand drawn as well.
Yeah, I would love to pick up as many Peter Bagg pages as I could, but
really?
A lot of it has already been sold. I think a lot of it is kind of scattered to the winds. Yeah. This was a great one and done piece for me. If I could only have one Peter Bagg piece, I'm happy with this. Another collector picked it up, I think within the last several months, but then I saw it available on Comic Art Live. I knew I had to purchase this. Again, it's gigantic. I think it's 19 by 24.
Is that the one that's right to your right hand side?
Yeah, it's right over here.
That's the one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
But I just love kind of the gonzo energy of this piece, and I think I like that about all of Bagg's work. But this one, I think, kind of like shows as much of that as you can. Some of the interior pages, not so much, but yeah, I just love his work.
You're saying? Did you say that some of the interior stuff you don't like?
They're not not energetic as a piece like this. This is based on a previous cover, and I think it kind of captures a lot of what I really think of when I think of his style. And I think some of the interior pages, they're good, but just this one I think is one of the pieces where, like, if I could only have one Bagg piece, I'm happy with this.
No, it's a great one. It's a great one, and I love how here. Let me.
It's very 90s, this series, so I'm not sure how well it's aged. But like at the time, I was just like reading it voraciously, like every issue, and so.
I can tell you in here, just so we get a better view. Oh no, it disappears completely when I do that. Oh, okay. Oh well. Let me put it like this again. But yeah, you can get an idea, guys, of how giant looking that piece is. But I can tell you, Mark, that I told the story already recently on one of the episodes that I came to the series. I mean, I was aware of the series, back when it was coming out, when it first started. And I was attracted to the artwork, but not enough to give it a shot, and only I don't know when it was. I think it was the art gathering I go to every year. I think it was the one just before COVID, so just a few years ago. And my friend Bob Kopman had a bunch of these, and he brought them. And finally, for the first time, I could actually see these pages of Peter Bagg stuff from Hate and Need stuff in person. And so looking at it up close, like, it really got me excited. And then I asked him, I had the opportunity to finally actually sit with somebody who's really into it and talk about it, and had him tell me what it's about, really, and I was like, oh yeah, it sounds like that would be up my alley. And he goes, I think so too. I think you like it. I read it.
I know him only indirectly through some of the comments that he's left on some of his pieces, and like on a Facebook group that we're both a part of. But yeah, no, he's been great. But like, I know he goes deep with this kind of material, and he has some great pages.
Yeah. So that's it. So I can tell you, to your point of what you were saying about not, because it's very 90s. 90s or not. It's of course it's very 90s. It's set then. I can tell you, it's only been a few years ago that I first read it. So, and I can tell you, man, I really enjoyed it. So yeah. So
it's a fun book. So I'll expect to see the trade paperback on your shelf, any day now.
Well, I have it. I have one there. So I don't have the complete series or whatever, but I got one there. Actually, I got it there because it's right in front of me on a bookshelf. Bob, after I told him, I managed to find them at my local library, and I borrowed them and I read them and I loved them. And then he the next time I saw him, he gave me, because he had another copy or whatever, but he gave me one of the trades for it or whatever. So that was very nice of him, and yeah, happy to have that. I should eventually get the complete sets or whatever, because I really, really liked it. Okay, so let us now go to the next piece. There's 3 more guys, and 2 of them we're going to end with Jaime, but before we do a couple of Jaime pieces, we're going to have to look at this one, which for a lot of you is probably going to be like, what the heck? But it's so cool, and I've read this book, so let me share this. This is by an artist named Simon Hanselman, and and the comic, I guess, is called Meg and Mog. Is that the basically?
Yeah, that's kind of like the characters, the
characters, Meg and Mog.
Yeah.
Let's see here, Chrome. All right, here we go. All right, let's take a look at this color piece. So this is Below Ambition, the cover to Below Ambition. Check this out, guys.
Yeah, this is his most recent book. It follows, the shitty band that Meg, the witch-like character, is in with Werewolf Jones. So, I've been following this cartoonist, and I think these characters, over the last 6 or 7 years, like the material is incredibly crass, it's gross, it's all of those things, but I think it has a lot of heart as well. And so that's one of the things I like about it. Some of the filthiest humor that you've ever seen, especially like for the he did a pandemic set story that was kind of an alternate story to some of these main storylines, but that just followed these characters as they dealt with COVID, kind of being locked up. Crisis Zone, I think some of you might have read it. I think he serialized it on Instagram, and I think that's where he picked up a lot of followers. But yeah, I adore these characters. It's really crass, but I kind of like that kind of humor, and so I've really responded to that. And Al and Werewolf Jones, thank you. Can't forget that. But yeah, no, I love this material. I love the vibrancy of his art, especially the ones that I think are painted as opposed to the line art.
Yeah.
Really vibrant colors that I think he uses food coloring with. But yeah, I think pick it up if it's something that you like, any kind of sitcom where like the core character is so well defined, but they still surprise you from storyline to storyline. That's one of the things that I liked about it. Right. I think these characters are recently animated as part of some Hulu special, so that's another reason why I think I think a lot more attention is being paid to this creator. Yeah, no, it's fun stuff. It's hilarious. It's kind of like gross, but
yeah. And you did mention, I want to bring it up. I just want to mention, because in your description you did mention that it could be, for some people, it could be a tough read because of what you've mentioned. For those of you who aren't aware of it, a lot of it is drug usage, sex. It's some crazy situations happen. I will say that I got to tell you, Mark, when I told my friend Jeff Singh that, hey, I don't know if you've heard of this or whatever, but I'm going to check it out because my library has it, but it looks interesting. And he goes, oh, I've been meaning to check it out too, and after I read it, I sort of told him my feedback. And I got to say, my feedback essentially was, I got to say, like, yes, it's everything that you say it is. So I enjoyed it. Absolutely. But at the same time, I found at some points, I found it difficult to read. I feel like, and you absolutely tell me whatever you think about this comment, but the overriding feeling I was getting as I was reading it was that this was clearly, like, I felt that the writing itself, okay, in terms of quality of writing, I felt this guy is not a writer. I kept thinking what this is essentially, it's almost like a diary. This is a guy struggling because of all the struggling with his upbringing, the drugs, his sexuality, all this other stuff, right? This is a guy who's got so much shit in his head that he's dealing with, and it's almost like this is his therapy to put it out on paper,
Yeah. So it's like,
You know?
I think, it's more situational based. And I think a lot of the situations repeat themselves, it's repetitive behavior.
Right.
So it's definitely that, right? It's like, I'm going to like work this out, in all these different ways. I'm going to put them in a different situation that's slightly different, but that sort of like heightens their kind of behavior, their grossness, their, depravity, what have you,
Yeah.
their self-abuse. So I think it's all of that. And I think that's kind of, it's less like, I'm going to follow something from page 1 to page 200, and more like, let's see what kind of situations I can put these characters in. Let's see if they break or not. What happens to them if I like change this somehow. So yeah, it's more kind of almost kind of like a sitcom in a way, right? It's not
Yeah.
it's not something where it's like, I'm going to start here. Here's the initiating incident of the plot, and then I'm going to follow that over 100 pages. It's more like, oh yeah, what happens like if they start to have their own reality show or something like that.
Right. Right.
Or like, what if we encounter this group on the street, who starts to call them out for whatever reason, and they get in a fight, what happens then? So I
Yeah.
think it's kind of like, yeah, he's not a writer so much as like, I'm going to put these characters in situations, let's see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well said. Okay, great. Guys, we have a couple more pieces to show. And for those, we will be going back to the wonderful Jaime Hernandez. And let us, or let me, I should say, share this next one with you. It's the second to last piece. And this one is from, I believe, the story Easter Hunt.
Yeah.
And that is here. Let us bring this up. Easter
Yeah.
Hunt.
This is the first page. I own this complete story.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Happy to pick it up directly from the artist. So I yeah, this again is one of those pieces that I remember so clearly reading in 1993. I think from when the story, 1993 or 1994.
Okay.
What's interesting about this piece is that it's based on a childhood story that the two letters did together. And so
Oh,
this is a story that they reworked. And I think you can see in one of the alternate images, like the early version of this story that was published in the book. It's way
oh,
there, I think, towards the bottom. But yeah, just kind of love the wacky madcap energy of this piece. Kind of like it's, these characters don't behave like this in the main storyline. So this is kind of like an alternate story or what if story.
oh.
It's just kind of like image after image, destruction, mayhem, and then works its way towards the evil end. But yeah,
Yeah. I get that last panel in particular makes me think, oh, I wonder if they know anything about Crazy Cat or were inspired by Crazy Cat throwing the bricks at the mouse, and but of course it's probably just coincidence. But I love that. I love that. It's I guess like kind of like you say. I guess you could describe it at because of how the behavior out of the ordinary, so to speak.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think like Hopi, the other character in this, is really the star of the show. So it's basically her causing mayhem over 6 pages, which I love. I just love how expressive his cartooning is. I think there's almost a punch on every page, or some kind of punch or explosion on every page. So
Okay.
this really scratches a lot of itches for me. Just kind of the cartooning, the energy, and kind of like the history of the piece as well. I think all of those really drew me to this.
Yeah, very, very nice. I'll say that's one thing. One thing I can say for certain is regardless of what I felt with that one-time experience trying to read the series way back then, is I will absolutely say that the majority of the art that I've seen since then, not the stories, but just focusing on the artwork. I mean, it was clearly just fantastic. I mean, brilliant stuff, brilliant stuff. So I could see visually, I absolutely always understood why it was so renowned. I only struggled with why is the story renowned? Because my experience, blah blah blah. That whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. And Rick says that it sounds like Seinfeld meets the Freak Brothers. I don't know. I never read Freak Brothers. I mean, I know I read a little Freak Brothers, not enough to really, but I know of course, I know what they're all about.
That's it. Yeah, that makes sense. That tracks.
Yeah.
I've read some Freak Brothers in my time, so it definitely tracks.
Cool. And yeah, bricks, man. We always bring bricks. Very cool piece, Carl says, and Hart says that is cool. It is. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful page.
Thanks, guys.
All right. So we got one last piece here, everybody. Why don't we take a look at that one? Excuse me. All righty. So this one is the cover that was mentioned earlier. So that'll be fun to take a look at. So now you guys all will know what we were talking about earlier in the show. So Love and Rockets, the cover to The Complete Love and Rockets, Volume 9 from 1991. Yeah, this is so spectacular, man. Look at this. I got to do it slowly. Look at slow. At first, you're like, what's this? What's this? Like, if you don't see this, you're like, oh, what's going on here? And then, oh, the cigarette smoke. That's so cool, you know? How stark the imagery is. Oh, so fantastic. But yeah, tell me a little bit about this, man.
Yeah, no, it's there's a story that came about. And this is when, again, they really started to, especially Jaime, really started to hit his stride. This is a story that builds on kind of a throwaway line in one of the earlier stories regarding this character, Isabel Ortiz. She's kind of a writer. She, has kind of these adventures where she falls in love with a much older man. They get divorced. She has an abortion. She goes to Mexico. So detailing kind of like what happens to her. She meets the devil of all things. So it's kind of like a heavily kind of like Catholic influenced story, but it's just kind of like a masterpiece, 15-page masterpiece story. And it's just like it's often cited as like one of the best Love and Rocket stories ever.
Oh,
like, or at
maybe,
least
maybe that's the one you should be recommending to me then.
Yeah, no, I think you could read it without having any experience with the series. It definitely stands on its own. But like, this is a secondary character. But yeah, no, I think it expresses a lot. She's a writer. You can see kind of the tossed off pieces of paper she has there. Yeah, I think this kind of, in a nutshell, expresses like so much about this character in particular. And I think you might, if you read this story, I think you probably feel that. And I think it just stands alone as kind of a really strikingly designed piece of art. Pretend it's like Morpheus from the Sandman in case you need kind of an anchor there. But someone said that the other day, so I just wanted to repeat that. But yeah, no, I love this cover. Picked it up recently in San Francisco from Albert again.
Yeah,
I'm really happy to add this.
Oh, excellent. No, it's a absolutely beautiful. I should say that and I'm embarrassed to say it, but when I first looked at it, I was like, and I did what I did here. I slowly scrolled down, and when I got to the bottom, I was like, oh, what's the
popcorn?
Yeah, what's the the symbolism with the popcorn? And then I'm like, I can't figure it out. And then I'm like, wait a second, let me look back up. I look back up and I'm like, oh, what is she playing keyboards there? And I'm like, oh no, wait a second. No. That's a typewriter. She's at a table. She's a writer. She's working. And that's when it all clicked. And she's writing all her ideas or whatever. Like a lot of writers when they have writer's block, and you're just crumpling up every piece of paper after 5 words and tossing it in the trash, So that's beautiful, beautiful stuff though. My gosh. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that stuff, man. It's I like I said, even if I don't read it, I certainly can still really, really appreciate just for the graphic quality of it, love that stuff. So and I think
it's one of the reasons why I kind of stuck with it, right? I mean, I think it's like if it was just like the writing alone, I might not have stuck with it, but I think it's the combination of the two. And just kind of watching how brothers, I think Jaime resonates with me in particular, but just how they've really kind of grown as storytellers over the last 40 years. It's just like they've come a long way, still going strong. I think there was a documentary that was recently produced about them. So if you need kind of like an origin point, I think that might be it. But yeah, I think you can pretty much start anywhere.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no,
Rick has so many great John Sable pieces.
I know.
I often go to his gallery just to look at those because, again, thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I have to echo, these comments because, and again, not to harp on it, but when you also take into account that you've been in the art collecting hobby for only roughly 18 months. It makes it even that much more so impressive. To me anyways,
Yeah, and it's like, so I still feel like, there was stuff I wanted to collect, but I'm still evolving, right? I think, there may be more mainstream art in the future, but, it,
I was
or
gonna,
not, I think it's,
yeah, I was gonna,
yeah,
I was wondering, I was gonna ask you, like, I wonder if at some point you might be like, you know what? Okay, I've got enough of this stuff. Maybe I'll go back and veer into some mainstream for a bit, you know? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think, or it could also like, I want to collect some early romance work, I think it could go in that direction, or I want to
Right.
collect more underground stuff. So,
Okay.
I mean, like I'm open to seeing where it goes. And, I don't want to close anything off, but I also I kind of like the focus that I've started with as well.
No, it's fantastic. And this is why um I
There you
wanted
go,
to
Marcus.
that's why I wanted to have you on. Part of the reason, at least, it's because yeah, I mean it's again, most of us do the mainstream thing, right? And I even though I don't collect the books that you collect art from, I really love looking at it. I'm always interested in sort of exposing myself. Oh God, now these guys are going to make a joke about that.
I got to
Uh,
cut it off right there.
yeah, exposing themselves, yeah, to the myself to the different types of art, especially out of the mainstream or whatever. So that's why, and not just for my own sake, but because I think other collectors should be open to exposing themselves, opening themselves to newer, different types of art as well. And listen, I knew from the get go that by doing this, I knew that, like, in all likelihood, there's a good chance that this episode will be seen by fewer than usual people. Because a lot of the audience is typically mainstream type lovers, and so although my core guys, the guys who come in for the live, they come in regardless, but out of the people that typically only watch on rewind, I'm assuming, most of those guys are into the, mainstream art. And when you're into mainstream, you're not as
Yeah,
open to other things. And I expect that, that combined with the fact that it's another longish episode,
sure.
we probably won't get much. But you know what? The thing is, the beautiful thing about it is that it's going to be there. And over the long term, as my channel picks up, subscribers and viewers over the long term, slowly but surely, more people will get exposed to it. So
And,
that's what I like about it.
I mean, to kind of, I guess to echo that point, one of the reasons why I was drawn to both your show and some of the other things Nick's show is just that I think it's so educational to kind of understand how other collectors think, how they approach the hobby. So like I get that through your chats, some of the stuff I've seen on CAF, interacting with other collectors, even if they don't collect the kinds of things that I'm interested in. So, it's yeah. I mean, I think I've learned so much just by kind of like how other collectors have made themselves available and kind of are willing to discuss, what interests them, what excites them, how they approach the hobby. So yeah, I get a lot out of these shows. And it's one of the reasons why I'll watch no matter who's actually going to be on the show.
Right. Yeah, you get to see a lot more stuff that you might not ordinarily see, right? and
Yeah.
and and like you said, it's about learning as well. And for me too, I'm always looking to expand my knowledge with parts of the hobby that I may not be familiar with, right? So and like I said, that's why I wanted to do a show like this. And because you were in the audience, I was like, there's a perfect guy for this, so I
There you
for
go.
sure I figured, I'm gonna ask, and I didn't care if it was, a guy who's been in 18 months or 18 years. I mean, the point is, it was about this type of art that I really wanted to do an episode about. And I'm really glad we got to do this, man. It's been
Yeah,
fun.
me too. Me too.
Awesome.
Thanks for your questions in the chat too.
Yeah, thanks everybody. As always, thanks for being so kind to my guest and to me, busting my chops as well. Of course, I wouldn't have it any other way. I appreciate it, and please give a big thanks to my guest Mark Vega, because I appreciate everybody who comes on. But like I said, knowing that he's probably out of all the guys that I've had who've been in this as a guest, who've been in the hobby for a short period of time, I do believe Mark is the youngest service time in the hobby. And so who knows? In that sense, it could be intimidating for someone to do that, So I really appreciate you, Mark, man. Thanks again. It's been great. So thank you. And stick around, and I'll be with you in a couple minutes. All right.
Sounds good. Bye, everybody.
All right. Thanks. All right, guys. Just a reminder. Next week, I will have another episode of One-on-One, and that is going to be with my buddy Hart, who is in the audience as we speak. Here he is. What a handsome devil. Different colored hair this time than last time. He likes to do that a lot. And as you guys know, Hart had been my co-host, if you will, on three episodes of Comic Art Show and Tell. But this time he's agreed to come on a one-on-one so we could talk more about just his time in the hobby. He's been around a long time like I have. And so I figured we'd just shoot the breeze about his experiences and whatnot. And see what, if any, interesting stories he may have to tell us. So please tune into that. And that'll be at the usual time. That's on the 18th, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. And let me just leave it up there for you. And let me check one last time here. You're very, very welcome. Thanks, CJ, as always. I thank you tremendously for all the support. Appreciate it. And what else do we have here? A few more posts before we go. Comments, I should say. Here is from Ian. Love the Kawi Noir post recently. There you go. CJ says, great art is great art, no matter the time or the genre. Precisely. Couldn't say it better myself, man. And thank you, Mr. Easy Go Lucky. You're welcome, but I thank you always, as always, for your support, man. I really appreciate it. It means the world to me. It really does. Thanks for always being here and especially helping with the likes as well and contributing everything you do to the live chat. Tom, what's up? What is up, Tom? I didn't even know you were here. Did you come in late? I think you came in late. That's okay. I appreciate you checking it out, man. Good to see you. Awesome. And you're very, very welcome, CJ. Very, very welcome. And I know we both appreciate it. And a thank you to Mark, of course. He can see you, even though he's not on screen. He can see you and he can hear me. So he's seeing the thank yous as well. And ugly guy. I'm not that bad. Come on. Marcus, appreciate you too, dude. I appreciate it. Maybe one day you'll come on. Hey, can I count on you to be here on the Christmas on Christmas night? Is that why you asked about that last week? Are you intending on being here? Because you may be the only one, but I will be here. So if you're going to be here, that'll be cool. Let's have somebody to talk to, at least one person, and to open a couple of packages of art with. But thanks for everything as always, man. I appreciate it. And what else we got? That will last 6 minutes or less. Nice. Thank you, Carl. Thank you. Mahalo. Big mahalo to you, sir. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And hey, Jeff is back. Cheers. All have a great week. Have a great week, guys. And don't forget next show, the EXP, youtube.com/the EXP on Friday, 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific. And as always, a pleasure to see you. You're very welcome. Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate the support. So that's it, guys. Again, come and check me and Hart out. We'll shoot the breeze about the last 20, 25 years in the hobby. Should be fun. And that's it. Let me put this back up for you guys so you can remember. And I'll leave you here. Peace.